In a twist of fate, the prodigious Chinese physicist Lin Zhi finds herself entangled with Lorenzo DeSantis, the most perilous figure in European organized crime. Commanding both the underworld and the legitimate sphere, he is a man of unyielding resolve, never having known defeat. What she assumed would be a fleeting encounter ignites an insatiable flame within him. Following a serendipitous delay at the airport and a meticulously orchestrated abduction, she awakens ensconced in a lavish prison. The opulence surrounding her, adorned with exquisite garments and jewels, along with the imposing portraits on the walls, speaks volumes of his possessiveness. Lin Zhi, you are mine. There is no escaping that as the rational pearl of the East becomes ensnared in the obsessive love of a domineering magnate. The question arises, who will succumb first in this game of love masquerading as conquest? He considers himself the hunter, oblivious to the fact that from their very first meeting, she has become his sole forbidden territory. Chapter 1. An Accidental Encounter. In late spring, London is draped in a delicate veil of rain. Within the modern conference center by the banks of the Thames, the 5th International Youth Physical Chemistry Competition has just concluded. On the grand electronic screen, Lin Zhi, China proudly claims the top position. Applause cascades like a tidal wave toward the Chinese girl standing in the front row. Lin Zhi bows slightly as she accepts the trophy and certificate. Clad in a simple yet elegant deep blue suit, her skin appears as pure as snow, her raven hair cascading like a waterfall. Her almond-shaped eyes shimmer with intelligence, tempered by the serene grace unique to Eastern women. When she smiles, delicate dimples grace her cheeks, adding a touch of vivacity to her dignified demeanor. "Gee, you were exceptional," exclaimed Professor Melvin, his silver hair a stark contrast to his fervent embrace. "Your theoretical model brilliantly elucidated the experimental data." The judges were utterly astonished. "Thank you, Professor. Without your guidance, I could not have completed this project," Lin Zhi humbly replied, her voice clear and melodious, like a gentle stream striking stone. Her fellow seniors gathered around to congratulate her, their tones imbued with authentic admiration and a hint of envy. Lin Zhi is not only pursuing a dual doctorate in physics and chemistry, but she is also the most cherished student of Professor Melvin, who has brought only her to participate in the core project of this international competition. "Tomorrow is a free day. You may explore London at your leisure," announced Professor Melvin. "However, please remember to prioritize safety and return to the hotel by 8 in the evening." Cheers erupted from the team. Lin Zhi gently caressed the engraving on her trophy, her thoughts drifting back to her home in China. She yearned for the contentment on her father's face as he savored his tea, and the sight of her mother tending to roses in the garden. The prize money from this competition is sufficient to purchase a fine British bone china tea set for her father and a luxurious Scottish cashmere shawl for her mother. Upon exiting the conference center, the streets of London were aglow with lights, Gothic architecture and modern glass facades intertwined, creating an enchanting interplay of light and shadow in the rain. The team decided to indulge in a formal English dinner to celebrate their victory. In the elegantly decorated restaurant, Lin Zhi quietly sat in a corner, listening as her seniors discussed their future academic pursuits. "Gee, why are you so quiet?" Professor Melvin inquired with concern. Snapping back to the present, Lin Zhi smiled gently. "I was contemplating where to find gifts for my parents tomorrow." "Huh, our top scholar is indeed a dutiful daughter," one senior jested. The dinner concluded in a joyful atmosphere. Upon returning to the hotel, Lin Zhi opened her laptop and initiated a video call with her parents. As she showcased the gleaming trophy, her parents on the other end were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with pride. "Little Zhi, be careful abroad and avoid deserted places," her mother reminded her, as always. "Don't worry, Mom. England is quite safe. Tomorrow, I'll stroll down Oxford Street to buy Dad his favorite black tea and a cashmere scarf for Mom." After ending the call, Lin Zhi stood by the hotel window, gazing at the nightscape of London. The neon lights blurred in the mist of rain, resembling a Monet Impressionist painting. The following morning, sunlight unexpectedly pierced through London's customary gloom. Lin Zhi donned a light beige trench coat, loosely tying her long hair, which revealed her smooth forehead and elongated neck. Declining her senior's invitation to join them at the London Eye, she ventured alone to Oxford Street for shopping. On a bustling Saturday, Oxford Street was alive with activity, red double-decker buses and black cabs weaving through the streets, forming a quintessential London scene. Lin Zhi first selected Earl Grey tea and an exquisite bone china tea set for her father at Fortnum Mason, then chose a light gray cashmere shawl for her mother at John Lewis. With shopping bags in hand, she turned into a relatively quiet side street, drawn by the display window of an antique shop. Inside were Victorian-era scientific instruments, brass microscopes, astrolabes, and hand-painted celestial maps, captivating her as a science enthusiast. Just as she hesitated to enter the shop for a closer look, a sudden screech of tires echoed from the street corner, followed by screams from the crowd. "Get down. There's a gun," someone shouted in English. Instinctively, Lin Zhi crouched down. Through the glass window, she glimpsed a group of men in black, brandishing firearms, pursuing several bloodied individuals. Bullets struck nearby vehicles, and alarms blared. Pedestrians scattered, engulfed in chaos. The shopkeeper hastily locked the door, beckoning Lin Ji to take cover behind the counter. "Miss, hurry. It might be a gang shootout." Her heart raced, yet she managed to maintain composure, quietly reaching for her phone to call for help, only to discover that the signal had been disrupted. The gunfire persisted for nearly 5 minutes before abruptly ceasing, leaving the street in a haunting silence. "Are you all right?" The shopkeeper, a kindly middle-aged woman, asked, her face pale. "I'm fine. Has it ended outside?" Lin Ji replied in fluent English that I don't know, but it's best to wait a while longer. 10 minutes later, distant sirens could be heard. Lin Ji thanked the shopkeeper and cautiously opened the door. The street lay in disarray, several cars had collided, and there were scattered traces of blood, yet curiously, those involved in the shootout, along with the injured, had vanished. As if they had evaporated. With the police yet to arrive on this small street, Lin Ji resolved to return to the hotel swiftly. Consulting a map, she discovered a shortcut through an adjacent alley that would lead her back to the main road. This alley was dim and damp, flanked by Victorian-era red brick buildings, their walls adorned with moss. The sunlight was obscured by towering structures, casting only sporadic patches of light onto the slick cobblestones. Lin Ji quickened her pace, the sound of her heels echoing crisply in the silence. As she reached the center of the alley, she suddenly heard heavy breathing, mingled with suppressed groans of pain. Lin Ji halted, alert. The sound emanated from behind a pile of discarded wooden crates. After a moment of hesitation, her innate kindness triumphed over fear, and she softly inquired in English, "Is anyone there? Do you need help?" No response came, but the breathing grew noticeably more labored. She approached cautiously, and the sight that met her eyes made her gasp in horror. The tall man leaned against the wall, the left shoulder of his black suit soaked in blood. His facial features were distinctly European, with a prominent nose, thinly pressed lips, and a jawline as sharp as a knife. Despite his pallor from blood loss, his deep gray eyes remained as piercing as an eagle's, now warily fixed upon her. What startled Lin Ji most was the black handgun clutched tightly in his hand, the barrel drooping but poised to be raised at any moment. "Sir, you are injured," Lin Ji compelled herself to maintain her composure and said in a professional tone that I possess some knowledge of first aid. "You need to stop the bleeding immediately." The man scrutinized the unexpectedly appearing Eastern woman. She was beautiful, possessing a delicate charm distinct from that of European women. Ivory skin, eyes like obsidian, and features reminiscent of a Chinese ink painting, elegant and refined. Despite her evident anxiety, her gaze conveyed genuine concern. "There is no need for trouble, miss," he replied in a deep voice, hoarse from pain. "You should leave this place." The man attempted to rise but, weakened from blood loss, crumpled forward. Without a moment's hesitation, Lin Ji rushed to support him with her petite frame. In their close proximity, she detected a complex aroma blending the scent of blood, gunpowder, and a hint of expensive cedarwood perfume. "You will die like this," Lin Ji exclaimed urgently. "There should be a clinic nearby. I will take you there." The man weakly shook his head. "I cannot go to a regular hospital. There will be surveillance." Lin Ji bit her lip, contemplating for a moment, and suddenly recalled a small private medical center she had noticed while passing by yesterday, only 2 blocks away. "I know a place, not a large hospital," she asserted firmly. "But you must trust me and put away your gun. You will frighten others." The man's deep gray eyes bore into Lin Ji, seemingly assessing her credibility. At last, he laboriously tucked the handgun back into its holster at his waist and murmured, "If you deceive me, if I wanted to harm you, I could have abandoned you just now." Lin Ji interrupted, casting him an irritated glare. "Now, we must leave here quickly." With a shopping bag slung over one arm, Lin Ji wrapped the other around the man's waist, supporting him as they moved forward. The man endeavored to manage his weight, yet he still bore down on her, causing her to stumble. They slowly emerged from the alley, sunlight once again bathing them. Passers-by cast curious glances, but the inherent restraint of Londoners prevented any significant intervention. "What is your name?" the man suddenly inquired, his tone softened. "Lin Ji," she replied. "And you?" After a brief silence, he murmured, "Kyle." Lin Ji recognized that this was not his real name, yet at this moment, it held little importance. She focused on locating the medical center while closely monitoring Kyle's condition. His complexion grew increasingly pale, and his breaths became shallower. "Hold on. We are almost there," she encouraged, sensing his weight becoming more burdensome. Finally, they reached the private medical center. Lin Ji settled Kyle into a chair in the waiting area and swiftly approached the front desk. "My friend has sustained a shoulder injury and requires urgent care," she succinctly informed the nurse. "But he cannot go to a large hospital. He has a phobia of hospitals." The nurse regarded the bloodied Kyle with suspicion, then glanced at Lin Ji's anxious yet sincere face, ultimately nodding. "Dr. Smith is available. I will take you to examination room 3. In the examination room, Kyle was placed upon the medical bed. As the doctor began to cut away his suit and shirt, Lin Ji gasped. In addition to the fresh gunshot wound, his sturdy chest and abdomen bore several old scars, narrating a tale of an extraordinary past. "The gunshot wound necessitates reporting to the authorities," the doctor stated solemnly. Kyle suddenly opened his eyes, and despite his weakness, His gaze was sharp enough to make even the seasoned doctor take a step back. It was merely an accident. Treat the wound, and I will pay you double. The doctor hesitated, looking at Lin Ji, who gently nodded. Please do as he says, doctor. I assure you this is merely an accident. As the doctor prepared anesthetics and suturing instruments, Kyle's hand suddenly grasped Lin Ji's wrist. His palm was large, enveloping her slender wrist entirely, warmth radiating through her skin. Why are you helping me? He asked, his gray eyes penetrating as if peering into her soul. Lin Ji met his gaze calmly. In my culture, to stand by and watch someone in peril is the most immoral act. Kyle stared at her for a long moment before finally releasing her hand and murmuring, Thank you. As the doctor began to tend to the wound, Lin Ji moved to the window, gazing at London's gray-blue sky. She knew not who this man named Kyle was, nor why he had been shot, and least of all, she was unaware of the whirlpool into which she had unwittingly been drawn. Chapter 2. Stealth. As the potency of the anesthetic receded like the ebbing tide, Kyle, or rather, Lorenzo DeSantis, gradually regained consciousness on the medical bed. With his gray eyes slightly ajar, he instinctively surveyed his surroundings, assessing potential threats. The room was infused with the scent of antiseptic, and the fluorescent lights emitted a faint hum, while dusk enveloped the world outside. The excruciating pain in his left shoulder was alleviated by professional bandaging. He attempted to move his fingers to confirm that the nerves remained intact. The gunshot had come unexpectedly. Had it not been for the sudden appearance of that girl from the east. Where is she? Lorenzo rasped, addressing the nurse who was checking his blood pressure. The nurse, startled by his inquiry, quickly comprehended whom he was asking about. The young lady? She left 2 hours ago. Before departing, she settled all your medical expenses. Lorenzo, perhaps it is time to refer to him by his true name, furrowed his brow in surprise. In his 32 years of life, women either feared him or sought something from him. Never had anyone offered assistance so selflessly and departed quietly. Did she leave a name or contact information? The nurse shook her head, handing him a payment receipt. No, sir. However, she did sign to confirm the payment, right here. Lorenzo took the receipt, his gaze falling upon the elegant signature, Lin Ji, a quintessential Chinese name, with the surname preceding the given name. The handwriting was neat, yet possessed an undeniable character, much like the impression she left on him. She also asked me to convey her wishes for your swift recovery, the nurse added. A barely perceptible smile flickered at the corner of Lorenzo's lips. This girl was not only brave, but also possessed remarkable composure and empathy. After witnessing a gunfight and aiding a stranger, she had the forethought to depart without disturbing him. Where is Dr. Smith? He inquired. I am here, the doctor replied, entering the room with a professional solemnity. How are you feeling, sir? Your injuries are serious. The bullet grazed your scapula, although it did not damage major blood vessels. You have lost a significant amount of blood. Lorenzo sat up, a slight frown crossing his features as the strain on his muscles elicited discomfort, yet his demeanor remained composed. Thank you for your professional care. I need you to keep this matter strictly confidential. He extended a black business card, devoid of a title, bearing only a gilded family crest and a phone number. As Dr. Smith received the card, his fingers trembled imperceptibly. He recognized the crest. Within London's medical circles, whispers of this family occasionally surfaced, wielding immense influence over a vast business empire while harboring a shadowy underside. Of course, Mr. DeSantis. Patient confidentiality is our most fundamental ethical obligation, the doctor responded, his tone tinged with reverence. Lorenzo elegantly descended from the bed. Despite his grave injuries, he maintained an air of aristocratic poise. He donned the freshly tailored suit prepared by his men, concealing the bandages, and in an instant transformed from an injured party back into a figure of formidable authority. Outside the clinic, night had fully descended. The streets of South London shimmered with a cold sheen in the rain, as if the entire city held its breath for the emergence of this man. As Lorenzo stepped through the clinic's doors, a silent ceremony commenced. On the corner, a dozen black Bentleys and Maybachs stood in solemn formation, resembling a pack of wolves awaiting their alpha. Beside each vehicle stood 2 men clad in dark suits, their vigilant gazes and upright postures radiating an air of trained lethality. Upon Lorenzo's appearance, everyone inclined their heads slightly, their right hands brushing their left chests. This was a salute to the highest leader within the family. Raindrops fell upon their shoulders, yet no one raised a hand to wipe them away. An impeccably groomed elder approached briskly, holding a black umbrella over Lorenzo. This was Marco Ricci, his most trusted aide, who had been with the DeSantis family for nearly 30 years. Your Excellency, we are late, Marco said, his voice low and laced with deep remorse. Today's incident was my oversight. I failed to anticipate the movements of the Corsicans. Lorenzo did not respond immediately, his gaze sweeping across the street. The absence of police was no coincidence. The influence of the DeSantis family had long infiltrated every corner of this city. Tonight's gunfight would be recorded as a mere gang clash, with no connection to the heir of Europe's most enigmatic criminal empire. Return to the estate, he commanded tersely, his voice as cold as the London night rain. The moment he settled into the car, Lorenzo allowed himself to exhibit a hint of fatigue. The leather seat exuded a familiar scent, and the spacious interior afforded him room to stretch his injured arm. Marco sat opposite him, cautiously observing his expression. What did the doctor say? Should we summon the family physician for a follow-up? Flesh wounds, Lorenzo replied succinctly, his gaze drifting to the flowing nocturnal scenery outside. What of the assailants? All dealt with. The survivor admitted they were under the Corsican gang's orders, though they did not know the specific target. Marco's tone was calm, yet carried an icy undercurrent. It appeared someone was dissatisfied with our expansion in London. Lorenzo nodded slightly, unperturbed by this outcome. The DeSantis family had risen from Italy, extending their reach across Europe through 3 generations. As the sole heir, he had known from a young age that he lived on the edge of a knife. Today's attack was merely a part of the daily grind. However, the appearance of that Eastern girl was an unforeseen variable. The convoy traversed the River Thames, heading northwest towards Hampstead, where the DeSantis family maintained one of its London strongholds, a 5-acre Georgian estate, nestled behind dense foliage, secluded from the world. Marco, Lorenzo suddenly broke the silence within the vehicle. Find a Chinese girl named Lin Ji. She is likely around 23 or 24, with black hair, bright eyes, and approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall. Marco blinked in surprise. He seldom heard his boss express interest in women, let alone actively seek someone out. Do you have any more information, Your Excellency? Lorenzo pondered for a moment, recalling that beautiful and composed face. She should be in the UK for a short stay, possibly as a student or scholar. Fluent in English, cultured, intelligent, and courageous. He paused before adding, check the recent records of Chinese academic delegations in London, particularly the hotels in the vicinity of Oxford Street today. Marco swiftly noted this on his tablet, internally astonished. The boss's description was unusually detailed, diverging from his typical demeanor. What should we do once we find her? Marco inquired cautiously. Lorenzo's gaze returned to the window, rain tracing winding patterns against the glass. First, confirm her identity and background. Do not alarm her. Understood, Marco nodded, then recalled something. Regarding the Corsicans, should we retaliate? A cold smile flickered across Lorenzo's lips, a timely reminder of who controls the rules of the game here. But do not overdo it. We are currently negotiating an investment immigration plan with the French government, so it is best not to stir unnecessary trouble. As the convoy approached the estate's iron gates, manicured lawns and classical sculptures flanked either side. The main house was ablaze with light, and the servants were already lined up in anticipation. As Lorenzo alighted from the car, everyone bowed their heads respectfully. Entering the study, the fire in the hearth crackled to life, dispelling the chill of the rainy night. Lorenzo shed his coat, accepting a glass of single malt whiskey from a servant, and stood by the window, gazing out at the rain-soaked garden. His thoughts drifted back to that shadowy alley, to that fragile yet resolute figure. A man who had survived years amidst gunfire had long since adapted to betrayal and scheming, accustomed to resolving all matters with wealth and power. However, today, an unarmed Eastern girl astonished him with an unparalleled shock born from the purest goodwill. He silently recited the name Lin Ji in his heart, akin to savoring a fine aged wine. The sound of a knock interrupted his contemplation. Marco entered with a tablet in hand, a relaxed expression gracing his face after completing his task. I found her, Your Excellency. Lin Ji, 23 years old, currently pursuing dual doctorates in physical chemistry at Tsinghua University in China. She is here in London with Professor Melvin's team for the International Young Scientists competition, having just secured first place yesterday. The team is staying at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Knightsbridge, with a flight back to Beijing scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Lorenzo's eyebrows lifted slightly. No wonder she is so extraordinary, beautiful, brave, and an elite from a prestigious institution. Shall we arrange for someone to visit her at the hotel? Marco inquired. No, Lorenzo shook his head, taking a sip of whiskey as the amber liquid swirled in the glass. I will go personally. Marco's surprise was evident. Your injury is of no consequence. Lorenzo's tone was unyielding. Prepare the car for tomorrow morning. After Marco left, Lorenzo retrieved a leather-bound notebook from the safe. Flipping through the yellowed pages, he noted the dealings, alliances, and enemies of the Santis family across generations. In this history written in blood and power, there had never been a chapter about the serendipitous intrusion of an Eastern girl. He picked up a fountain pen and inscribed the date and a brief note on a blank page. London, near Oxford Street, assaulted, aided by a Chinese woman, Lin Ji. The pen lingered on the paper for a moment before he added a rare personal remark, unparalleled. Outside the window, the rain began to subside. The night sky over London revealed a crescent moon, its cool glow spilling over the rose garden of the estate. For most, it was merely an ordinary spring night. But for Lorenzo DeSantis, something had quietly transformed. He picked up the internal phone and issued another command. Prepare a gift suitable for a young and accomplished scholar. The voice on the other end responded respectfully, not daring to inquire further. Lorenzo set down his glass. The ache in his left shoulder a reminder of the life and death moment from earlier that day. In that dim alley, when those Eastern eyes met his, he felt for the first time something more exhilarating than power. Under the moonlight, a smile of determined conquest graced Lorenzo DeSantis's lips. Chapter 3. The reward: the morning sun of London danced through the classic window panes of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, flickering upon Lin Ji's eyelids. She had just finished organizing her luggage and was preparing to enjoy breakfast before heading to Heathrow Airport. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Professor Melvin. Ji, great news. The professor's voice trembled slightly with excitement. Imperial College just contacted me, saying an important sponsor wishes to meet our team members, especially you. Lin Ji furrowed her brow slightly, her fingertips unconsciously tracing the lock of her suitcase. Professor, we were scheduled to return home this afternoon. My parents are waiting in Beijing to celebrate with me. I understand. But this opportunity is too rare to pass up, Professor Melvin urged in a lowered voice. The university revealed that this sponsor is a significant figure, a representative from a top European consortium. Gaining his favor would greatly benefit your future academic endeavors. Lin Ji moved to the window, gazing at the morning mist over Hyde Park. As a researcher, she was acutely aware of the importance of funding for her studies. After a moment of hesitation, she replied softly, "All right, I will call my parents to explain." The call with her parents went unexpectedly smoothly. As academics, they fully understood the value of such an opportunity. "Little Ji, this is a good thing." Her father, Lin Yizhou, pushed up his glasses on the video call, pride evident on his face. Imperial College is a world-class institution. Being specially invited by them indicates your capabilities have been recognized. Her mother, Zhuang Mingzhu, carefully advised, "Remember to bring multiple copies of your award certificate and maintain decorum when meeting important figures. We can wait a few more days for you in Beijing. Your safety is paramount." After ending the call, Lin Ji exhaled softly. She reopened her suitcase, retrieving the light gray professional outfit she had prepared for the award ceremony, and tied a light purple silk scarf around her neck, striking a balance between formality and youthful vibrancy. At the same time, inside the office of the Dean of Imperial College, the atmosphere was unusually tense. "It is indeed a great honor to welcome Mr. DeSantis." Dean Williams continually adjusted his tie, practicing his smile in front of the mirror. The several vice deans beside him wore similarly grave expressions, as if preparing to receive a head of state. "Dean, the DeSantis Family Foundation does indeed donate significant funds to us annually, but you need not be so anxious," the young academic affairs director queried, puzzled. Dean Williams turned, his expression serious. "You do not understand. Lorenzo DeSantis is not merely a philanthropist. His family controls a substantial portion of Europe's economic lifeblood, and both the political and business realms show him great deference." He spoke in a lowered voice. "It is said that their family harbors undisclosed backgrounds. Even the prime minister must yield to him." On campus, 10 black sedans quietly arrived. The doors opened, and first to emerge were over 20 bodyguards clad in dark suits, equipped with communication devices. They swiftly dispersed, forming an invisible barrier of vigilance. Following them, Lorenzo DeSantis elegantly stepped out of the car. Today he donned a bespoke dark blue suit, perfectly concealing the injury on his left shoulder. Sunlight illuminated his chiseled features, and his gray eyes resembled a wintry sky, stern and profound. "Dean Williams," Lorenzo extended his hand, his voice deep and powerful, expressing gratitude for the reception. "It is our honor." "Mr. DeSantis." The dean quickly shook his hand, feeling the strength and authority in the other's grip. "We have arranged the meeting with the award-winning student team, as per your request." Lorenzo inclined his head slightly and, surrounded by the throng, proceeded towards the main auditorium. His strides were steady, exuding a compelling aura. Even the most vivacious students instinctively quieted, awed by the majesty of the mysterious guest. At 10 in the morning, Lin Ji and her team arrived at Imperial College. The Gothic architecture shimmered in the spring sunlight, and students could be seen throughout the campus, engrossed in their books, creating a rich academic atmosphere. "This is truly impressive," remarked Senior Zhang Xiaowen. "How wonderful it would be to conduct research here." Professor Melvin beamed. "That is why today's opportunity is particularly precious. Everyone must perform admirably." The university's reception staff warmly guided them to the main auditorium. The hall, capable of seating 1,000, was already filled to capacity, not only with students, but also numerous seemingly important school leaders and professors. "What is happening? Wasn't it supposed to be a small meeting?" Senior Li Zhi murmured. Lin Ji quietly took her seat in the reserved front row, a sense of unease stirring within her. This spectacle far surpassed that of a typical sponsor visit. Dean Williams stepped onto the stage to deliver an address, initially praising the Chinese delegation's outstanding performance in the competition, particularly noting Lin Ji's award-winning research that innovatively addressed issues in energy storage. Then, his tone shifted to one of excitement. "Today, we are immensely honored to welcome a special guest. He is not only our most significant benefactor, but also a major donor for the European Science Foundation. Due to his modest nature, he typically does not make public appearances, but today, he has specifically come to commend the exceptional future scientists." The auditorium erupted in enthusiastic applause, and all eyes turned curiously towards the entrance. "Now, let us invite our esteemed award recipient, Miss Lin Ji, to the stage." Under the encouraging gaze of her mentor, Lin Ji gracefully ascends the platform. The spotlight shines upon her, and the multitude of eyes from the audience fixates on her, intensifying her nervousness beyond that experienced during international competitions. She feels a slight warmth in her cheeks, an uncomfortable sensation of being overly scrutinized. Just as Dean Williams prepares to continue his introduction, the grand doors of the auditorium slowly swing open. A tall figure stands tall against the light. As he strides forward, the atmosphere in the hall seems to freeze. People instinctively hold their breath, awed by the commanding presence of a newcomer. Lin Ji squints her eyes, and as the figure approaches, her heart races. It is none other than the man who was gravely injured last night, requiring her support to walk. Today, Lorenzo appears transformed, a stark contrast to his condition the night before. His suit perfectly accentuates his broad shoulders and narrow waist, exuding an undeniable aura of authority with each step. When his gaze meets Lin Ji's, a flicker of astonishment and a deeper, more primal satisfaction, the satisfaction of a hunter locking onto his prey, flashes in his gray eyes. Lorenzo strides directly to the stage, and as he passes, people instinctively lower their heads, as if bowing to a king. He ascends the steps with ease, standing beside Lin Ji, compelling her to look up at his towering figure. "It is a great honor to meet you again, Miss Lin," he states, his voice low yet clearly audible in the hush of the auditorium. Dean Williams promptly yields the central position, respectfully introducing, "This is Mr. DeSantis, our most distinguished guest." Lorenzo nods slightly to the audience, and then turns to Lin Ji. "I have immense respect for scientific talent. Upon learning of your research achievements, I decided to come personally to express my admiration." With a gentle wave of his hand, an aide approaches, carrying a velvet box. As the box opens, a collective gasp resonates through the hall. Inside lies a necklace adorned with a magnificent blue diamond, reflecting dazzling light. "This is the Ocean Star, formerly belonging to the wife of a renowned scientist," Lorenzo states calmly, yet emphatically. "I believe it should belong to a shining star in the scientific community like you." Lin Ji stands frozen. The value of this gift far exceeds the bounds of normal rewards. Instinctively, she wishes to refuse, but Professor Melvin below is fervently signaling her to accept. To her astonishment, Lorenzo then announces, to support more outstanding talents like Miss Lin, the DeSantis Foundation will donate £50 million to Imperial College, specifically for funding young scientists' research projects. The auditorium erupts in excitement, with Dean Williams nearly moved to tears. Under the gaze of all present, Lorenzo lifts the necklace, gesturing for Lin Ji to accept it. As she bewilderedly extends her hand, Lorenzo unexpectedly steps forward and embraces her. This embrace is brief yet powerful. His breath lingers by her ear, his deep voice audible only to her. "Thank you, Lin Ji. I will not forget what happened last night." Lin Ji's heart races uncontrollably, and her cheeks flush. This embrace transcends mere formality, carrying an unmistakable implication of possession. Lorenzo, equally unsettled, finds himself captivated by her faint scent of lilies. With immense self-restraint, he suppresses the urge to kiss her on the spot. When he releases her, his expression has returned to calm, as if it were merely an ordinary, courteous embrace. Thunderous applause erupts from the audience, all celebrating the generosity of this patron who values talent. Only Lin Ji remains dazed, the diamond box in her hand suddenly feeling unbearably heavy. She watches Lorenzo effortlessly wave to the audience, and when their gray eyes meet again, a glimmer of understanding passes between them, a light that only she can decipher. This seemingly serendipitous encounter is, in truth, a meticulously orchestrated reunion. The wheels of fate have begun to turn ever so quietly. Chapter 4. Delay. The London night is resplendent and mysterious, with lights along the banks of the Thames twinkling like diamonds adorning the meandering river. In her suite at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, Lin Ji carefully places the last neatly folded item into her suitcase and gently closes the lid. The events of the day linger vividly in her mind. The brilliance in Lorenzo DeSantis's deep gray eyes, that unexpected embrace, and his low voice whispering in her ear. She approaches the mirror and instinctively touches her cheek, where it still seems to retain the warmth of his embrace. It was merely an unexpected interlude. She softly reassures her reflection. Tomorrow, she will fly back to Beijing, returning to her familiar world to continue her academic pursuits. The enigmatic man and this bizarre experience will ultimately become a page in her memories. She picks up her phone and sends a message to her parents. "Dad, Mom, I will arrive at the capital airport at 9 tomorrow night. Looking forward to enjoying Mom's soup at home." Almost instantly, her mother, Zhuang Mingzhu, calls. "Little Ji, have you packed everything? Your passport and ticket should be kept separately in your carry-on." Her mother's voice is gentle, yet filled with concern. "I heard it's been chilly in London these past few days. Make sure to dress warmly for the airport tomorrow." "Don't worry, Mom. I've got it all sorted," Lin Ji replies with a smile, a warm feeling swelling in her heart. The voice on the other end shifts to her father. "Linny Joe, be careful at the airport. Keep your valuable items close. Make sure to rest well for a few days when you return. There's no rush to head to the lab." "Got it, Dad. You and Mom shouldn't overexert yourselves. I can help you organize the latest experimental data once I'm back." After ending the call, Lin Ji lies on her bed, gazing at the exquisite crystal chandelier on the ceiling. The thought of returning to her familiar surroundings and seeing her beloved parents brings an involuntary smile to her lips. For the 23-year-old, the thrills of this European journey have far exceeded the bounds of her ordinary life. Meanwhile, in a Georgian-style estate on the outskirts of London, Lorenzo DeSantis stands before the floor-to-ceiling window of his study. Moonlight bathes his chiseled profile, casting profound shadows. He holds a glass of amber whiskey, his fingers lightly caressing the glass wall. A soft knock interrupts the silence, and Marco Ricci enters quietly, standing 3 paces from the desk and bowing slightly. Your Excellency, everything has been arranged. Marco's voice is low, as if wary of disturbing the tranquility of the night. Lorenzo does not turn around, merely nodding slightly, ensure that everything is foolproof. Yes, Your Excellency, Marco replies respectfully. Lorenzo turns to face him, the moonlight illuminating a subtle smile playing at the corners of his lips. Excellent. After Marco respectfully exits the study, Lorenzo approaches the desk and opens an exquisite wooden box. Inside lies a yellowed old photograph of his grandfather with a Chinese scholar in his youth. Fate is often wondrous. The bond formed between the DeSantis family and China 60 years ago seems to be continuing in another form. He takes a sip of whiskey, the liquid sliding down his throat with a hint of warmth. The image of the Eastern girl becomes increasingly vivid in his mind. Her composure when she saved him, her shyness when accepting the award, and the glimmer of wisdom sparkling in her bright eyes. In his world filled with power and intrigue, Lin Ji is like a clear stream, drawing him irresistibly closer. Just give me a little more time, Lin Ji, Lorenzo murmurs softly to himself, a glint of determination shining in his gray eyes. The following morning, sunlight streams through the mist onto the streets of London. Lin Ji rose early, and after organizing her luggage, she joined her team. Professor Melvin appeared radiant, clearly delighted with the outcomes of their journey to England. Children, he exclaimed, not only have we triumphed in the competition, but we have also garnered the admiration of Mr. DeSantis. On our way to the airport, the professor could hardly contain his excitement, stating that this would greatly benefit your future academic endeavors. Senior student Leisha curiously inquired, Professor, just who is this Mr. DeSantis? The higher-ups at Imperial College show him such respect. Professor Melvin lowered his voice. It is said that he belongs to one of the most powerful families in Europe, with enterprises spanning the globe. However, their family has always maintained a low profile, rarely appearing in public. It is indeed a tremendous honor that he personally met with us. Lin Ji listened quietly, her fingers unconsciously brushing against the velvet box in her bag. The diamond necklace, named Ocean Star, was far too valuable. She had intended to have the hotel return it before leaving, but felt that would be rather impolite. Ultimately, she decided to take it back to her homeland and ask her father for assistance. Speaking of which, she hadn't had a decent Chinese meal during her days in England. Senior Zhang Xiaowen interrupted Lin Ji's thoughts, saying, when I get back, I must first indulge in some hot pot. This topic immediately resonated with everyone. I want to have Peking duck. Leisha chimed in, British cuisine is indeed quite unique. I miss my mother's braised pork. Lin Ji smiled, her heart swelling with longing for her hometown dishes. Outside the car window, the iconic structures of Heathrow Airport came into view. However, contrary to expectations, a long queue formed at the airport entrance, with many flights displayed on the electronic screen as delayed or cancelled. What is going on? Professor Melvin frowned. Upon entering the terminal, they were stunned by the announcement. Due to severe weather conditions, all flights to Asia today will be delayed until evening. Passengers are advised to await further notifications. Lin Ji gazed out at the sunny sky through the glass window, with a few white clouds drifting lazily by, showing no signs of inclement weather. This is very strange, she murmured. Professor Melvin approached the service desk for inquiries, returning with a grim expression. They say there are unexpected air currents at high altitude, and for safety reasons, the flight schedule needs to be adjusted. We have rebooked for tonight's flight. Now we can only wait. With no other option, the group settled into the VIP lounge. Lin Ji sent a message to her parents about the flight delay and received a series of concerned replies from her mother. It's all right, safety comes first. Her father Lin Ezhou reminded her over the phone, cautioning her not to wander around the airport and to keep her belongings secure. As time slowly passed, more travelers filled the lounge. Lin Ji found a seat by the window and took out a professional book to read. Yet, an unsettling feeling lingered, as if a pair of eyes were watching her from the shadows. After glancing around several times, she only saw a variety of travelers, a businessman engrossed in his laptop, an elderly couple conversing softly, and several young people engrossed in their phones. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Unbeknownst to her, in the corner of the lounge, a man, seemingly an ordinary traveler, was observing her through the gap in a newspaper. A low command crackled through the tiny earpiece in his ear. Ensure she remains safely at the airport. Do not let her leave before nightfall. Understood, the man replied quietly, his gaze sweeping over Lin Ji's delicate profile once more. Meanwhile, in the manor's study, Lorenzo received the latest report. Standing before the window, he gazed at the meticulously trimmed rose bushes in the courtyard, his fingertips lightly tapping against the window frame. Sir, shall we prepare for tonight's meeting? Marco inquired respectfully. Lorenzo's lips curled slightly. Yes. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling of the airport, casting dappled shadows upon Lin Ji's pages as the clock in the waiting area ticked slowly. each passing minute stretching the wait and drawing closer the inevitable intersection of two worlds. Chapter 5. The unexpected in the VIP lounge at Heathrow Airport. Time seemed to come to a standstill. The electronic flight display continued to show the unrelenting status of delays for the flight to Beijing. Lin Ji glanced at her watch. It was 3:15 p.m., and she had already been waiting here for nearly 6 hours. I am going to the restroom, she softly informed her senior, Zhang Xiaowen. Zhang Xiaowen looked up from her phone. Do you want me to accompany you? No, I'll be back shortly, Lin Ji smiled, shaking her head as she left her backpack on the seat, taking only her small handbag. The airport restroom was located at the end of the corridor outside the lounge. Lin Ji pushed open the heavy door, and the marble-decorated space echoed with the sound of dripping water. She approached the sink, turned on the tap, and felt the cool water wash over her fingertips. Looking up at her reflection in the mirror, she noted the unmistakable signs of fatigue etched across her features. Just as she was about to leave, the stall door creaked open, and a middle-aged woman stumbled out. Dressed in a well-tailored camel coat, her silver hair meticulously styled, the woman wore a pained expression. I apologize, dear, she said, her heavy French accent revealing her distress. I accidentally twisted my ankle. Could you please assist me? Lin Ji noticed the blood seeping from the woman's right ankle. Her kind instincts propelled her forward. Are you all right? Do you need me to call for medical assistance? No. The woman quickly waved her hand, leaning against the sink. It's just a scrape. I have some band-aids in my bag. Could you help me apply one? Without hesitation, Lin Ji crouched down, retrieving a clean tissue from her handbag to gently press against the woman's bleeding ankle. In that instant, the woman's expression sharpened. She swiftly pulled a white handkerchief from her bag and forcefully covered Lin Ji's mouth and nose. A pungent sweetness flooded Lin Ji's respiratory system. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at the suddenly cold face before her. In her struggle, her nails grazed the woman's wrist, leaving behind a few red marks. But the strength quickly drained from her body. Her vision blurred, ultimately succumbing to the chilling lights of the ceiling before plunging into an abyss of darkness. She had been gone for 20 minutes, and Zhang Xiaowen anxiously glanced at her watch. Could she have gotten lost? Professor Melvin frowned. Chen Jie, go check the restroom. Chen Jie returned shortly, her face puzzled. The restroom is empty. I asked the janitor, and she said she heard some noise about 15 minutes ago, but when she checked, no one was there. An ominous premonition spread among the group. They scattered throughout the airport to search, inquiring with staff, but receiving no news of Lin Ji. The airport's announcements repeatedly called her name, yet there was no response. We must report this, Professor Melvin said, his face pale and his fingers slightly trembling. The airport police reviewed the surveillance footage, but curiously, the recordings near the restroom during that time were all black screens. The authorities indicated they would investigate, but suggested that Lin Ji might have left on her own. Impossible, Zhang Xiaowen exclaimed. Xiaoji's passport and ticket are with me. How could she leave by herself? Ultimately, just before the flight was set to depart, Professor Melvin made a difficult decision. You all return home first. I will stay behind to continue searching for Lin Ji. Inform her parents, but do not elaborate too much on the situation. The team members boarded the plane reluctantly, their hearts heavy with concern for Lin Ji. Professor Meyerwin gazed at the ascending airplane with a profound sigh before making his way to the police station to file an official report. Meanwhile, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided silently along the roads of suburban London. Inside the vehicle, Lorenzo de Santis fixed his gaze upon Lin Ji, who lay languidly across his lap. The effects of the sedative had not yet fully dissipated. Her long eyelashes cast shadows upon her fair cheeks, and her lips were as tender as cherry blossoms. He gently brushed aside the strands of hair from her forehead, his fingertips inadvertently grazing her smooth skin, sending a shiver of electric thrill coursing through his entire being, compelling him to press his lips against her vibrant petals. This unprecedented sensation left him both perplexed and enchanted. Throughout his 32 years of life, no woman had ever rendered him so utterly discomposed. Sir, we have arrived at the estate, came the respectful voice of the driver through the intercom. Lorenzo withdrew his lips from where they had nearly touched hers and took a deep breath, instructing, proceed directly to the front of the main residence. The car entered a vast iron gate that seemed to meld with the surrounding environment, traversing along a winding driveway flanked by meticulously trimmed lawns and classical sculptures. With a man-made lake shimmering like gold in the distance under the setting sun, the main mansion was a grand Georgian edifice, its white stone walls exuding an air of solemnity and mystery in the twilight. The servants had already assembled in a line. Yet when Lorenzo cradled Lin Ji as he alighted from the vehicle, they respectfully bowed their heads, refraining from a lingering gaze. Without my permission, no one is to enter the West Wing guest room, Lorenzo commanded, steadily ascending the curved staircase while cradling Lin Ji. He had specifically prepared the largest guest room in the West Wing for her. Pushing open the heavy mahogany door, he was met with a breathtaking arrangement, pale golden wallpaper, an exquisite crystal chandelier, and vast floor-to-ceiling windows framing a meticulously designed garden vista. Most astonishing of all was the large photograph of Lin Ji hanging on the wall above the headboard, capturing her radiant and confident smile as she received an award from Imperial College. The walk-in closet was filled with an array of garments, from casual attire to evening gowns, all tailored to her measurements. An elegantly crafted jewelry box adorned the vanity, housing precious ornaments sourced from far and wide. Lorenzo gently laid Lin Ji upon the silk-sheeted bed, covering her with a soft down comforter. He seated himself in the armchair beside the bed, his gaze lingering on her serene visage. As night fell completely, the servants quietly placed a dinner card outside the door, careful not to intrude. Lorenzo merely waved them away, remaining steadfast at her bedside. He reminisced about the first time he met Lin Ji, in that dim alley where she had unhesitatingly assisted a gun-wielding stranger. She had shone like a beam of light, piercing through the darkness of his world. As the heir to the DeSantis family, he had been taught from a young age to never display weakness or trust others. Yet, this Eastern girl ignited within him an unparalleled desire to protect and possess. "You will understand my actions, Lin Ji," he murmured softly, his fingers gently tracing the back of her hand that rested outside the covers. Moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft silver glow upon Lin Ji's face. Lorenzo observed the tiny calluses on her right index finger and thumb, remnants from years of holding a pen and experimental instruments. These subtle details made her all the more real and endearing. Time flowed in silence, each passing minute deepening this relationship destined to be fraught with entanglements. As the clock struck midnight, Lin Ji's eyelashes fluttered slightly, signaling her impending awakening. Lorenzo adjusted his posture, anticipating their first formal reunion. Chapter 6. Forbidden Pet. Lin Ji's consciousness surfaced like a pearl rising from the depths of the ocean, slowly and laboriously. Each strand of thought felt ensnared in thick honey, heavy and sluggish. In her haze, the first sensation she registered was the extraordinary softness beneath her. This was no ordinary hotel mattress, but rather as if she were sinking into a cloud. Then, a subtle blend of cedar and leather wafted into her nostrils, infused with a distinctly masculine aroma that was unlike any scent she had ever encountered before. It was neither the acrid smell of cleaning products from an airport restroom nor the ubiquitous lavender fragrance of hotel linens. This was a more intricate and personal scent, as if it could seep into every pore of her being. Struggling to open her heavy eyelids, her long lashes fluttered like butterfly wings. In her blurred vision, she first beheld a ceiling adorned with exquisite Rococo-style reliefs, with a grand crystal chandelier refracting diamond-like light in the morning's soft glow. "You are awake?" A deep male voice resonated from a corner of the room, imbued with a familiar magnetism, akin to the vibrations of the lowest strings of a cello. Gently grazing her heart, Lin Ji thought she was still dreaming and vigorously shook her head, attempting to dispel the fog in her mind. With this motion, she realized her entire body felt languid and powerless. Footsteps approached, steady and forceful, each step echoing in time with her heartbeat. The mattress sank slightly as someone sat beside her, a tall figure casting a shadow that enveloped her in darkness. "Are you hungry? Would you like something to eat?" Lin Ji's eyes widened abruptly, the sight before her jolting her into full consciousness. Lorenzo DeSantis sat merely an arm's length away, his deep gray eyes fixed intently upon her, akin to a tempestuous sea concealing surging whirlpools beneath its surface. Today, he wore a simple black silk shirt, two buttons casually undone at the collar, revealing sharply defined collarbones. The fitted cut accentuated his broad shoulders and muscular chest, exuding an elegance and strength reminiscent of a leopard, even while seated. "Ah, you. Who are you? Where am I? What has happened to my mentor? My classmates?" She shrieked, instinctively retreating, her voice sharp with fear as her fingers clenched the silk sheets beneath her. Lorenzo shook his head gently, a smile playing at the corners of his lips, as if soothing a frightened creature. "Look at me, Ji," he said, his voice deep and soothing yet imbued with an undeniable authority. Lin Ji scanned her surroundings, her gaze flitting over the opulent decor of the room, an ornate Persian carpet, classical oil paintings adorning the walls, and gleaming brass accents, finally settling on the large photograph of herself above the headboard. It captured her radiant smile and confident demeanor during her award ceremony at Imperial College. Yet in this unfamiliar environment, it appeared strangely disconcerting. Memories surged forth like a tidal wave. The airport restroom, the silver-haired woman claiming to have an injured ankle, the acrid scent of a handkerchief, and the encroaching darkness. "Mr. DeSantis?" She trembled, her voice quivering as her fingers unconsciously twisted the bedspread. "What is this place?" Lorenzo leaned forward, taking her hand in his. His palm was large and warm, enveloping her icy fingers entirely, the contrasting temperatures causing her to shudder slightly. His thumb caressed the back of her hand, a gentle motion imbued with an unmistakable possessiveness. "This is my estate, and this is the room I have prepared for you," he said, releasing her hand and gesturing towards the spacious walk-in closet and vanity. "You see, all of this is for you." Lin Ji stared blankly at his gestures, her mind reeling at the sight of the lavish garments and sparkling jewelry that shimmered in the morning light. She stood frozen for a moment, suddenly realizing a terrifying truth. She was not a guest, but a prisoner. "No," she whispered, and in an instant, As if electrified, she sprang from the bed. Sir, I must leave. My Minter's classmates are undoubtedly searching for me. I am grateful for your care, but I must return. My parents are awaiting my arrival home. She leaped barefoot from the bed, disregarding the chill of the cold marble floor, and hurried towards the intricately carved wooden door. Just as her fingers grazed the icy brass doorknob, a large hand pressed firmly against the door behind her. Lorenzo's body was pressed tightly against her back, his searing warmth penetrating through her thin clothing, nearly scorching her. He towered over her, completely enveloping her in his shadow. He leaned down, his warm breath brushing against her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. Linji, his voice was low and menacing, each syllable crafted with a blend of temptation and threat. Do you think that by saving me, you can simply walk away? Linji froze in place, her heart racing. She could feel the rise and fall of his chest, the overwhelming aura of aggression radiating from him. This proximity left her feeling dizzy, a blend of fear and inexplicable excitement. You belong to me. His lips nearly touched her earlobe, every word laced with heated breath and undeniable possessiveness. Do not think of going anywhere. Stay by my side. With that, he abruptly turned and strode towards the door. At the moment he opened it, he paused for a brief moment, the lines of his profile appearing exceptionally chiseled in the morning light. He instructed those outside, take good care of the young lady. Prepare breakfast, and make it the most exquisite. The door closed behind him, the sound of the lock clicking sharp and resolute. Linji slid helplessly to the floor, her back against the cold door, tears falling silently. A few minutes later, the door opened once more, and a group of uniformly dressed maids entered in an orderly fashion. Miss, we are here to assist you with your bath, the lead maid said respectfully, her face adorned with a practiced smile, her gaze unyielding. The maids helped Linji to her feet and guided her to the bathroom connected to the bedroom. The bathroom was astonishingly spacious, featuring a Carrara marble bathtub comparable to a small swimming pool, with a meticulously manicured English garden visible through the window, where several white roses glistened in the morning dew. As the warm water enveloped her body, Linji began to calm down slightly. She noticed that the bath products lined up on the edge of the tub were all from top-tier brands, such as La Mer. Even the fragrance was her preferred lily scent. She hesitated before speaking. These have all been specially prepared for you by Mr. DeSantis. The maid replied with a smile as she began to comb Linji's long hair. He is quite familiar with your preferences. Linji was taken aback. This man not only kidnapped her, but had also researched her lifestyle habits and preferences in advance, leaving her chilled with an unsettling sense of control. After the bath, the maids dressed her in a pale lavender silk gown, perfectly tailored to fit her slender waist. When she was led to the small dining room, the mahogany table was already laden with an array of exquisite breakfast delicacies, from smoked salmon Benedict to freshly baked croissants, accompanied by elegant silver tea sets. Please enjoy your meal, the maid said as she pulled out a chair for her. The master instructed that you should inform us of any needs you may have. Linji gazed at the feast before her, yet felt no appetite. Outside the window, sunlight bathed the neatly trimmed lawn, where a few white peacocks strolled leisurely. This scene was as beautiful as a fairy tale, yet she knew she was merely a bird trapped in a gilded cage. She rose and approached the window, attempting to push it open, only to discover that it was securely locked. I wish to see Mr. DeSantis. She turned to the maid, striving to maintain her composure. The master has instructed that he will come to see you later. The maid replied respectfully. For now, please enjoy your breakfast. Linji returned to the table, forcing herself to eat a small piece of croissant. She needed to maintain her strength, to keep a clear mind to navigate this insane situation. As a science student, she was accustomed to analyzing problems logically, yet everything before her surpassed her understanding. Why would a powerful man choose to imprison her in such a manner? Was it merely because of their chance encounter? After breakfast, Linji toured the guest suite in the company of the maid. Besides the bedroom and bathroom, there was a small study filled with books, covering topics from quantum physics to classical literature, nearly encompassing all her reading interests. To her astonishment, several copies of her published papers in academic journals were laid out on the desk, accompanied by detailed handwritten notes. These have all been prepared for you by the master, the maid explained. He mentioned that you might find these useful. Linji ran her fingers over the notes, the handwriting strong and vigorous, evidently penned by Lorenzo himself. Even more surprising were the questions posed within the notes, which coincidentally aligned with her current research direction, reflecting the writer's profound scientific knowledge. Who exactly was this man? Not only a mafia lord, but also possessing such deep understanding of science? In the afternoon, Linji sat in the study, attempting to find answers among the books sent to her. When the clock struck 4, the door opened once again, and Lorenzo entered. He had changed into a deep blue loungewear, softening his usual sharp demeanor, yet the sense of control in his gray eyes remained unchanged. As he approached, a faint scent of whiskey and cigar wafted through the air, intertwining with the inherent cedar fragrance surrounding him, creating a unique and captivating masculine aura. Do you like what I have prepared for you? He walked to the desk, his gaze landing on the paper she was reading. As he leaned closer, the collar of his shirt slightly opened, revealing the robust contours of his chest. Linji set down her pen and met his gaze directly. Mr. DeSantis, I believe we need to have a serious conversation. Lorenzo's lips curled into a slight smile as he pulled a chair and sat across from her. His movements were elegant and unhurried, his legs casually crossed, arms resting on the back of the chair, the posture accentuating the tautness of his shirt fabric, outlining the strong muscles of his arms. Of course, my dear Ji. His gaze lingered on her face as if appreciating a rare work of art. What would you like to discuss? Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden halo over this asymmetrical dialogue. Chapter 7. Caged Beast. The afternoon sun poured through the study's floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the entire room in a warm golden hue. Lin Ji sat upright in the armchair. Her back straight, hands tightly clasped in her lap, knuckles white from the pressure. She watched Lorenzo leisurely walk to the liquor cabinet, pour aged whiskey into a crystal glass. The amber liquid shimmered enticingly in the light. He turned, leaning against the edge of the table, his long legs casually crossed, taking a sip of his drink. Even in loungewear, he exuded an undeniable aura of authority. The silk fabric clung to his broad shoulders and muscular chest, rising and falling slightly with each breath. Mr. DeSantis. Lin Ji took a deep breath, striving to keep her voice steady. I believe we need to have a serious discussion. Lorenzo narrowed his gray eyes slightly, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. I have told you to call me Lorenzo. His voice was low, laced with a hint of languor, yet imbued with an undeniable authority. This is inappropriate. Lin Ji shook her head firmly. I appreciate your recognition of me, but I must return home. My parents are waiting for me. They are already aware of my flight delay, and if I do not return soon, they will be frantic. Lorenzo gently swirled his glass, the ice clinking against the sides with a crisp sound. Concerning your parents, he spoke as casually as if discussing the weather. I have taken care of the situation. Lin Ji's heart sank suddenly. What do you mean by that? This morning, they received a call from the European Young Scientists Foundation. He explained slowly. Yet his gaze remained fixed on her reaction. The caller informed them that due to her outstanding performance in the competition, she had been awarded a special 3-month research opportunity to participate in a highly confidential cutting-edge project. Communication would be restricted during this period, but she could make one phone call per month to report her safety. They would not believe it. Lin Ji stood up in excitement, her voice trembling with anger. My parents are both scholars. They know what the proper procedures are. Oh, is that so? Lorenzo set down his glass and stepped forward. His shadow loomed over her, and the scent of cedar mingled with whiskey enveloped her. What if this call was redirected from the International Cooperation Office of Tsinghua University? What if a formal document bearing an official seal was subsequently faxed to your father's office? Lin Ji's complexion turned pale in an instant. She realized that this man possessed a power far beyond her imagination, capable of easily fabricating a seamless lie. What about my mentor? Professor Meyer would never stand idly by. The clever girl has asked the right question. Lorenzo let out a low laugh, devoid of warmth. Your mentor is indeed an upright person. Therefore, I personally met with him. What? Lin Ji's eyes widened in disbelief. Just this morning, as he was preparing to inquire again at the police station about the progress, Lorenzo reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, the gesture intimate enough to be unsettling. I assured him that you are in an absolutely safe place, conducting important research for me. I even generously promised that a substantial donation would be made to his laboratory upon the project's completion. His fingers barely brushed against her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. He is an astute man, aware that in the face of certain powers, compromise is the only option. After all, the police, he paused, a hint of mockery flashing in his gray eyes, pose no pressure at all. Lin Ji abruptly recoiled, her back colliding with the cold bookshelf. Despair surged within her like a tidal wave. She realized she was ensnared in a meticulously woven net, with every possible escape route severed by this man. How dare you? Her voice choked, tears welling in her eyes, yet she stubbornly held them back. How dare you treat me this way? How dare you strip me of my freedom? I am a person, not your possession. The final words seemed to trigger a switch, and the languor in Lorenzo's gaze vanished instantaneously, replaced by a primal focus and intensity. He stepped forward, his formidable aura enveloping her completely. How dare you? He echoed her words, his voice deep and menacing. In the next moment, Lin Ji felt the world spin. A pair of iron arms suddenly drew her into a firm and heated embrace. Her startled gasp was stifled in her throat. Her face pressed against his solid chest, her nostrils filled with his overwhelming masculine scent, cedar, whiskey, and a hint of tobacco, invading all her senses. Just because of this, his arms, like steel, tightened around her waist, while his other hand gripped the back of her neck, forcing her to look up at him. His gray eyes now blazed like burning silver flames, filled with raw possessiveness. From the moment you walked towards me in that alley, when you looked at me with those clear eyes, I never intended to let you go. His face inched closer, his heated breath cascading over her face. You illuminated my dark world. Do you think I would allow you to leave? Stay here, by my side. Before the words had fully escaped his lips, his mouth descended upon hers. Lin Ji struggled in terror, her hands pressing against his chest, but it felt as futile as an ant trying to shake a tree. His strength was overwhelming, rendering her immobile. Just as his scorching lips were about to meet hers, she clenched her jaw tightly, sealing her lips in a silent and fierce protest. Lorenzo's kiss ultimately landed on her tightly pressed lips, imbued with an irresistible heat. He did not forcibly pry her mouth open, but instead engaged in a tantalizing dance, marked by an almost reverent greed, yet tinged with a hint of reluctant restraint due to her resistance. His nose brushed against her cheek, deeply inhaling her delicate lily fragrance, his throat constricting as he seemed to suppress the surging desires within him. After a long pause, he slowly lifted his head, releasing her from his grip. There was a tumult beneath the surface of his eyes, yet his voice had regained its previous calm, albeit slightly hoarse. You may refuse, Ji. But I have all the time in the world, waiting for you to grow accustomed to my presence. Lin Ji immediately wiped her lips with the back of her hand, as if trying to erase all traces of his touch. Her cheeks flushed crimson with anger and shame, her chest heaving violently. Her bright black eyes ignited with fury as she glared at him. Lorenzo observed her childlike actions and the brightness in her eyes fueled by anger. And instead of being angered, he chuckled softly. That laughter emanated from deep within his chest, imbued with a sense of joy and inevitability. You are truly beautiful, especially when you are angry. He reached out, seemingly intending to touch her cheek again, but Lin Ji quickly turned her head away. His hand halted in midair, then naturally retracted and slipped into his pants pocket. Rest well. He turned and walked towards the door, his steps leisurely. See you at dinner. The study door closed behind him, the sound of the lock clicking echoing clearly. Lin Ji felt as though all her strength had been drained. Sliding down along the bookshelf to the floor, the cold marble beneath her, through her thin skirt, seeped chill into her, yet it paled in comparison to the ice within her heart. She buried her face in her knees, her shoulders trembling slightly. Outside the window, the sun began its descent, painting the sky in a mournful orange-red hue. A few birds flew across the horizon, soaring freely towards the distance. Lin Ji gazed at the boundless sky. Tears finally slipped down silently. She understood that within this magnificent gilded cage, her struggle against the hunter had only just begun. And behind that seemingly gentle man lay an unwavering determination to never let go. She must remain vigilant and find a way to escape. Otherwise, what awaited her would be utter downfall. In the distance, a low and concise command from Lorenzo resonated outside the study door, an order directed at the waiting servants. The voice was calm, authoritative, starkly contrasting with her current turmoil. Lin Ji wiped her tears, forcing herself to regain her composure. She was Lin Ji, a future young scientist who had persevered through wisdom and determination, and she would never concede easily. The night gradually enveloped the secluded estate, shrouding her unknown fate as well. Chapter 8. The dinner. As dusk fell, the main house of Hampstead Manor illuminated with warm lights amidst the deepening blue tones, resembling an island floating amidst the wilderness on the outskirts of London. Lin Ji stood before the floor-length mirror in her guest room, the maid having just tied the final bow of her sapphire blue velvet gown. This vibrant color accentuated her Eastern features, her fair skin and dark hair appearing even more breathtaking, yet it also served as a lavish wrapping, proclaiming her treasured status. She took a deep breath, her fingertips lightly brushing over the delicate fabric of her dress. Tonight marked her first formal dinner with Lorenzo, an engagement that required careful navigation. She needed to observe, gather information, and most importantly, let him lower his guard. The long corridor leading to the dining room was adorned with thick Persian carpets, her footsteps falling soundlessly upon it. On the walls flanking the room hung oil paintings with a somber hue, the eyes of the figures seemingly animated under the glow of the wall sconces, silently observing the Eastern visitor who had intruded upon the ancient world of Europe. Lin Ji keenly noted the faint red glimmers emitted by several discreetly positioned cameras, concealed within the ornate decorative lines, akin to lurking eyes. The intricately carved wooden double doors of the dining room were silently drawn open by two attendants. The sight before Lin Ji momentarily stole her breath away. The dining hall exceeded all expectations in size, with soaring ceilings adorned by a magnificent Venetian crystal chandelier, its myriad facets refracting light into a dazzling cascade resembling a starry night. The nearly extravagant mahogany dining table gleamed, meticulously set with resplendent silverware and crystal goblets. What quickened her heartbeat most, however, was the peculiar arrangement of the table, which featured only two high-back chairs positioned closely at one end. Lorenzo was already seated in one, casually swaying the crystal goblet in his hand, the amber liquid swirling within. This evening, he donned a tailored deep gray checkered suit, devoid of a tie. The collar of his white shirt casually undone, revealing sharply defined collarbones. Under the light, his chiseled features bore a softer demeanor than their daytime sharpness, infused with a languid aristocracy, yet when his gray eyes lifted to meet hers, they retained a hawk-like intensity. You have arrived, he said, rising, his voice deep and resonant like the strings of a cello, echoing subtly in the vast dining hall. Instead of pulling out the chair opposite her, he personally drew back the one adjacent to his. I hope this dress fits well. The royal blue suits you beautifully, akin to stars in the profound night sky. The proximity was unsettling. As Lin Ji sat, she could distinctly perceive the scent of cedar and amber from his aftershave, a steady presence that undeniably invaded her sensory space. "Thank you. It's lovely," she murmured softly, her gaze falling to the exquisite Sèvres porcelain before her. Dinner commenced amidst an atmosphere of deliberately cultivated tranquility. Uniformed servants glided silently, presenting the first course of oysters adorned with caviar and edible gold leaf. Lorenzo dined with elegance, simultaneously narrating the origins of each dish. "The chef's grandfather once served the Duke of Windsor," he remarked, skillfully slicing a small piece of foie gras, his movements graceful and practiced. "His soufflé is a veritable masterpiece. You must try it later." Lin Ji nibbled at her bread, finding it tasteless. Her thoughts were entirely elsewhere, racing through her mind. Through the grand arched windows of the dining room, she could vaguely discern part of the estate's outline. There seemed to be a surrounding wall in the distance. Further still lay a darkened wood. She needed to ascertain the height of the wall, whether there were blind spots in the surveillance, and if the woodland could provide cover. "Not to your liking?" Lorenzo's voice pulled her back from her reverie, noticing that her main course remained largely untouched. Just as she was about to explain, he naturally sliced a small piece of the seared foie gras from her plate and extended it to her lips with a silver fork. The intimacy and suddenness of the gesture were overwhelming. The fork's tip glimmered under the light, contrasting dangerously and enticingly with the seemingly gentle yet assertive gaze in his eyes. Her initial reaction was one of resistance, her body instinctively leaning back. However, in a flash of insight, she realized that confronting him would only heighten his vigilance. If she wished to find an opportunity, she must persuade him that she was gradually acclimating to her circumstances. She lifted her eyes to meet his fathomless gray ones, then slightly leaned forward, parting her lips to accept the morsel. The foie gras melted in her mouth, exquisite beyond measure, yet she felt only a tightening in her throat. A flicker of surprise crossed Lorenzo's eyes, swiftly replaced by a deeper delight. A satisfied smile curved his lips, softening his striking features, rendering him breathtakingly handsome. "Excellent," he murmured in a low, soothing tone, akin to comforting a frightened kitten. "You need to regain your strength. A frail bird cannot soar far, can it?" This remark bore the semblance of playful banter, yet it also resonated as a profound warning. The remainder of the dinner unfolded in an atmosphere of eerie harmony. Lorenzo appeared to be in high spirits, engaging in more conversation than usual. He introduced her to the paintings on the walls, some from his family collection, others acquired at auctions. Lin Ji attempted to steer the conversation toward subjects that piqued her interest. "This estate seems to have a rich history?" she inquired nonchalantly, sipping from her glass of mineral water. Lorenzo's gaze lingered on her face for a moment, as if assessing the intent behind her question. He then leaned back in his chair, his fingers gently caressing the delicate stem of his wine glass. "A Georgian-era building. My great-grandfather purchased it in the 1920s when this area was still quite desolate." His gaze seemed to drift through her, reaching toward some distant past. "There are said to be even older tunnels beneath, possibly linked to a monastery. If you are interested in history, the Studies Archive holds a wealth of information." "Tunnels?" Lin Ji's heart skipped a beat, but she swiftly averted her gaze, concealing the turmoil in her eyes. Lorenzo observed the shadows cast by her lowered lashes on her cheeks, a peculiar satisfaction swelling within him. Here she sat beside him, adorned in the dress he had chosen, within the space he controlled, akin to a painting that had finally been perfectly placed. He recognized her pretense. Beneath the facade of calm, the spark of intelligence still flickered, seeking every conceivable fissure. He admired this wisdom, this resilience, which set her apart from any woman he had encountered. His desire was not merely to conquer her person, but to claim her heart, imbued with reason and pride. When he fed her, her momentary hesitation followed by eventual acquiescence ignited a flame deep within him. He understood she was plotting something, yet this only exhilarated him. The thrill of the hunt lay not in the swift capture, but in the chase. In watching the clever prey step into the meticulously crafted snare, he possessed ample patience and means, awaiting the moment she would willingly stay. As dinner concluded, the servant presented the chef's pride, a chocolate soufflé. Lin Ji tasted but a small spoonful before setting down her utensil. "Thank you for the dinner, it was delightful," she said, gently dabbing her lips with the napkin, mustering the courage to meet Lorenzo's gaze. "If it's not too much trouble, I would like to take a brief walk before retiring, just to familiarize myself with the surroundings. Remaining cooped up in the room feels a bit stifling." Lorenzo did not respond immediately. He slowly rose, his tall figure imposing an invisible weight. He approached her, close enough for her to sense his warmth. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of her black hair that had fallen over her shoulder, the gesture tender to the point of intimacy. "Wise choice, Ji. A bit of exercise indeed sharpens the mind, especially for a clever girl like you." His voice was low, tinged with a barely perceptible fondness. The estate at night possesses a distinct charm, particularly the rose garden. However, he shifted his tone, a glint of sharpness flashing in his gray eyes. "For your safety, Marco will accompany you. The estate is vast, and it is easy to get lost. Some areas are not entirely safe." Lin Ji felt her heart sink. He agreed, yet with the stipulation of constant surveillance. She forced herself to display an understanding, even grateful smile. "Thank you for being so considerate." She stood to take her leave, following Marco, who had been waiting outside the door. The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor, gradually fading away. Luo Lunzu stood alone in the empty dining hall, moving towards the immense floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the moonlight cast a cold glow, outlining the contours of the garden maze. He lifted his wine glass, downing the remaining liquid in one swift motion. The spicy liquid slid down his throat. Another butler appeared silently behind him like a shadow. Your Excellency, do you require any special instructions for Marco? Not necessary. Luo Lunzu's gaze continued to follow the slender figure outside, accompanied by Marco as she walked towards the garden. The cobalt blue dress transformed into a deep purple under the moonlight, allowing her to see and explore, leading her to believe she had found an opportunity. The corners of his lips curled into a determined arc. Only when she attempted to soar would she truly comprehend the confines of her cage. Ultimately, she would realize that remaining by his side was her safest and most rightful sanctuary. He understood this was a perilous game, indulging her hopes only to extinguish them personally at the most opportune moment, then rekindling another flame that belonged solely to him. This process might wound her, yet it was the only way to utterly shatter her wings of desire to escape, ensuring she would forever nestle within his world. The night breeze carried the distant cold fragrance of roses, while the moonlight elongated his shadow. In this opulent cage, the hunter advanced by retreat, while the self-proclaimed clever prey unwittingly stepped closer to the intricately woven web he had laid. Chapter 9 Nightfall. The moonlight cascaded like liquid mercury over the meticulously manicured lawns of Hanpuseted Manor, cloaking the Gothic spires and archways in a frigid silver veneer. Lin Ji followed closely behind Marco, strolling slowly along the gravel path, her cobalt velvet gown fluttering gently in the night breeze. The scale of the manor exceeded her wildest imaginations. Numerous corridors radiated from the main residence, connecting several annexes, and in the distance, a quaint glass greenhouse shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Occasionally, they encountered patrolling guards clad in black or servants hurrying past, each of whom paused to bow respectfully, their eyes betraying an unmistakable curiosity and awe. Miss, this way please. Marco's voice was steady and composed. He was a gentleman of around 50, his silver hair meticulously styled, exuding the elegance and precision of an old-school European butler. They passed through an archway entwined with wisteria, and before them unfolded a vast French garden, where geometrically arranged flower beds bloomed with roses of various hues, the night air saturated with their rich fragrance. In the distance, a meticulously trimmed hedge maze appeared enigmatic under the moonlight. The garden was the late Madame de Saunis's, Luo Lunzu's mother, most cherished creation. Noticing her gaze, Marco explained, particularly that maze, designed according to ancient esoteric patterns. Lin Ji's heartbeat quickened slightly as she feigned indifference, responding, "It's truly beautiful. I heard from Mr. de Santis that the manor has some ancient tunnels. Surely they are steeped in history." She endeavored to make her tone sound purely academically intrigued. Marco's footsteps paused imperceptibly before resuming their pace. Indeed, Mississippi, there is a network of tunnels beneath the manor, said to be remnants of a medieval monastery. However, he gently shook his head. Most entrances have been sealed off for years and are rather unsafe. Such a pity. Lin Ji sighed softly, striving to conceal her inner excitement. As historical relics, they must hold significant research value. Do you know where those entrances might be located? Marco's gaze swept towards what appeared to be an ordinary stone wall in the northwest corner of the garden. I remember one entrance was near the garden's tool shed, but the old master sealed it off long ago. He pointed to a small, ivy-covered stone cottage in the distance. It is now only used for storage. Following his gesture, Lin Ji firmly etched the location into her memory. The stone cottage was situated in a relatively secluded corner of the garden, surrounded by towering oak trees that formed a natural shield. If there truly was a tunnel entrance, even if blocked, it could serve as her escape route. She suppressed her excitement and pretended to show interest in other parts of the garden, slowly inching closer to the stone cottage. Bathed in moonlight, the stone cottage appeared ancient and mysterious, with vines cascading like green waterfalls, nearly obscuring the entire door. Just as she attempted to scrutinize it further, Marco's miniature communicator emitted a faint blue light. He raised his hand to gently press the earpiece, listened for a moment, then turned to Lin Ji with an impeccable polite smile. "Miss, I apologize for interrupting your stroll. The sir has instructed that it is late, and you should return to rest." Lin Ji's heart sank, yet she maintained an appropriate smile. "Of course, I am somewhat tired. Thank you for your company, Mr. Marco." Before turning to leave, she cast one last glance at the stone cottage, committing the surrounding topographical features to memory. Under the moonlight, the shadows of the oak trees swayed like phantoms, as if silently beckoning her. Upon returning to the main residence, the warm lights and the faint scent of sandalwood wafting through the air provided a stark contrast to the chilling atmosphere outside. Marco escorted her to the guest room door. Bowing as he took his leave, Lin Ji pushed open the heavy wooden door, the sight before her causing her to freeze in place. Luo Lunzu sat languidly in a high-backed armchair beside the fireplace in her room, relaxed and at ease. He had changed into a deep purple silk robe, the collar slightly ajar, revealing his well-defined chest. The firelight danced upon his sharply contoured profile, casting deep shadows. "Did you enjoy your walk?" he asked, lifting his gaze, his gray eyes glimmering in the firelight, as if capable of perceiving all her secrets. Lin Ji's heart raced, and instinctively, she took half a step back, bracing herself against the door she had just closed. "Mr. DeSantis, why are you here?" He did not respond immediately, but leisurely sipped his drink before gently clapping his hands. Almost simultaneously, a door on the inner side of the guest room swung open, and 4 maids entered in succession, standing respectfully to the side. "It is quite late. I believe you should rest." His voice was deep and calm, as if it were perfectly normal to appear in a woman's quarters at such an hour. "They will assist you with your bath and changing." Lin Ji's fingertips turned cold, and she feigned calmness. "I can manage myself. There's no need to trouble them." Luo Lunzu's lips curled into a smile that was both enigmatic and compelling. "Here, you need not lift a finger. Go on, I shall wait for you." Those words sent a shiver through her. "Wait for me? What do you mean?" Accompanied by the maids, Lin Ji mechanically entered the adjoining bathroom. The enormous marble bathtub was already filled with warm water, rose petals floating atop the surface, and the air was infused with the scent of lavender essential oil. "Miss, please allow us to assist you with your change," the leading maid said softly. Lin Ji wanted to refuse, but the thought of the man outside the door reminded her that any resistance would be futile. She allowed the maids to help her out of her evening gown, loosening the complex ties before sliding into the warm water. The temperature was just right, yet she felt as if she were sitting on pins and needles. Luo Lunzu was just a door away in the bedroom, and that realization tightened every nerve within her. What exactly did he intend to do? Why was he waiting for her in her room? She attempted to prolong her bathing time, hoping he would grow impatient and leave. However, when she donned an exquisite ivory silk nightgown under the service of the maid and pushed open the bathroom door, her hopes were dashed. Lorenzo did not depart. Rather, he shifted his position. Now, he leaned against her bed, propped up by several plush pillows. The collar of his robe loosened to reveal a broad expanse of well-defined chest muscles. In his hand, he held a book she had perused earlier, idly flipping through its pages. Upon hearing the door creak, he lifted his gaze, his eyes lingering on her for an extended moment. The fabric of her nightgown clung softly to her form, accentuating her slender waist and graceful curves. His expression darkened, akin to the restless depths of a midnight sea. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice even more gravelly than before. Lin Ji froze in place, her fingers instinctively tightening around the cuffs of her nightgown. "Why are you still here?" she questioned, her voice trembling slightly, yet resolute. "This is my room. Please leave." Lorenzo gently set down the book and rose slowly. His tall figure cast a long shadow in the light. As he approached her step by step, the silk robe billowed slightly with his movements, revealing the firm lines of his calves. As he drew nearer, Lin Ji could detect a faint scent of fresh soap mingled with the rich aroma of brandy and a distinct masculine essence, creating an intoxicating allure. "Your room?" He echoed her words languidly, a dangerous smile curling at the corners of his lips. "My dear Ji, everything in this estate belongs to me, including you." When he stood before her, Lin Ji had to tilt her head to meet his gaze. The pressure of his towering height nearly suffocated her. His gray eyes locked onto hers like a hawk fixating on its prey. "Don't come any closer," she implored, retreating until her back pressed against the cold wall, leaving her no escape. Lorenzo reached out, not to touch her, but to brace himself against the wall beside her head, trapping her within his shadow. His gaze slowly descended from her eyes, gliding over her slightly trembling lips, finally resting on her rapidly rising chest. "Are you afraid?" he whispered, his breath brushing against her cheek. "You should know. If I desire you, there is no room for resistance." Lin Ji's heart raced, nearly leaping from her chest. Her throat constricted, a tumult of fear and an indescribable emotion intertwining, causing her to shiver. Moonlight streamed through the window, intertwining with the room's illumination, etching this tense scene into a vivid tableau. A delicate woman ensnared between the wall and a man exerting absolute control. In this night-shrouded estate, the game of power entered a new phase. Chapter 10. Shared slumber. Lorenzo's approach radiated a searing heat, akin to an elegant, yet perilous cheetah zeroing in on its prey. As he closed the distance, the collar of his silk robe fell open wider, revealing a substantial expanse of bronzed, muscular chest. Lin Ji found her gaze irresistibly drawn to the chiseled contours above his chest, where a dark tattoo reminiscent of an ancient family crest or a soaring raptor flickered in the firelight, adding an air of mystery and wildness to him. "No, don't come any closer." Lin Ji's voice was taut with fear, desperately shrinking back, her spine pressed against the icy wall, leaving her with no retreat. Lorenzo's lips curled into a teasing smirk, his gray eyes glinting with a mix of mockery and danger, as if he were savoring a rare butterfly caught in a trap, yet still fluttering about. "This is my estate, my room, my bed," he declared, each my drawing him closer until only the sound of their breaths remained audible. "And you are now also mine. Why should I not approach?" His hands shot up, not to grasp her, but with a resounding thud, he pressed against the walls on either side of her head, confining her within the narrow space formed by him and the wall. It was a posture brimming with dominance and aggression. Lin Ji could even feel the air quiver as his arm muscles tensed. "Let me go?" she protested, struggling, her hands pushing against his solid chest in a futile attempt to dislodge him, akin to an ant trying to shake a tree. His body was like a warm, immovable wall, exuding a potent masculine musk mingled with cedar, brandy, and the freshness of his post-bath scent, creating a dizzying allure. He lowered his head, his heated breath brushing against her ear and neck, provoking a shiver that rippled through her, goosebumps rising on her arms. "Hush," he murmured, his voice low and husky, akin to a lover's intimate whisper, yet imbued with an undeniable command. "Be quiet, Ji. The more you struggle, the more I desire to conquer you." Unexpectedly, he released his hands from the wall and stepped back slightly. Lin Ji's taut nerves momentarily relaxed, believing he was finally departing, but before she could catch her breath, the world spun as Lorenzo bent down, one hand sweeping under her knees while the other cradled her back, effortlessly lifting her off the ground. "Ah, what are you doing? Put me down," Lin Ji cried out in panic, thrashing about, her legs flailing in the air, her fists pounding against his rock-solid shoulder. Yet her resistance was as ineffective as a stone sinking into the sea. Lorenzo's arms held her as firmly as iron, striding towards the massive four-poster bed in the center of the room. "I said it's time to rest." His voice bore an irresistible laziness, and as he reached the bed, he surprisingly laid her down gently upon the exquisite Egyptian cotton sheets. The mattress sank softly beneath her weight. Before Lin Ji could react and attempt to flee, Lorenzo's towering form loomed over her, his nose brushing against her forehead in a manner so intimate that it rendered her completely rigid. Then, astonishingly, he too climbed onto the bed, lying beside her, and with one long arm, he enveloped her slender form within his embrace. "You, get away." Lin Ji was both startled and furious, desperately pushing against his encroaching chest, her fingers grazing the warm, hard contours beneath his robe, causing her to recoil, as if shocked. Yet she found herself compelled to continue her struggle. "Don't move," Lorenzo's voice suddenly dropped, carrying a clear warning. He tightened his grip, pressing her even closer to him. And Lin Ji could distinctly feel a rising, burning, and dangerous change within him. His lips were nearly against her earlobe, the warmth of his breath rendering her ears flushed. "I am a normal man, and my patience has its limits. If you continue to move, tonight will not merely be a night of slumber. Do you understand?" This declaration struck her like a bucket of ice water, instantly freezing her every movement. She lay rigid in his embrace, scarcely daring to breathe. Fear coiled around her heart like a chilling vine. She clearly understood that this man was one who would follow through on his words, and provoking him at this moment would be anything but wise. Sensing her acquiescence, Lorenzo's taut body relaxed slightly, yet his arm remained dominantly encircling her. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling deeply, savoring the delicate scent of lilies wafting from her hair and skin, his throat bobbing as he seemed to wrestle with the surging desires within him. Lin Ji lay stiffly in his embrace, her heart pounding like a drum. The man's heated body radiated through the thin silk of her nightgown, leaving her flustered and disoriented. She bit down on her lower lip, forcing herself to maintain composure. A head-on confrontation would yield nothing but loss. She had to endure, to feign submission, and lower his guard. The tunnel, the one beside the stone house in the garden, was her only glimmer of hope. Before this, she needed to survive, to await the opportune moment. Lorenzo, feeling the transformation of the person in his embrace from fierce struggle to rigidity, and finally to reluctant relaxation, allowed a barely perceptible smile of satisfaction to curve his lips. The sensation of her submissively lying in his arms stirred emotions within him far more potent than any wealth or power he had ever possessed. He lowered his gaze, captivated by the flickering light of the fireplace, observing her tightly shut eyes and the slight tremor of her long lashes. Her beautiful profile, illuminated by the dim light, resembled exquisite porcelain. A strange, almost painful sweetness filled his chest. He desired her, longing so intensely that it ached in his body. Yet his deeper wish was to conquer her heart, to ensure she stayed willingly, to embrace her to sleep tonight, marking the first step toward victory. Both harbored their own thoughts in the vast and silent master bedroom of the estate, maintaining a posture that appeared intimate yet was rife with tension and calculation under the flickering firelight. Outside, the moonlight stealthily moved, gliding past the treetops, peering into this bizarre yet harmonious scene within. Time passed, and Lin Ji's taut nerves gradually relaxed amid exhaustion and the rhythm of his heartbeat, her consciousness fading. Lorenzo remained vigilant, listening as her breathing became steady and elongated, knowing she had finally succumbed to slumber. He carefully adjusted his position to make her more comfortable, drawing her deeper into his embrace, as if he were cradling the most precious treasure in the world, before finally closing his eyes in contentment. That night, Hampstead Manor was unusually tranquil, the only sound being the soft footsteps of patrolling guards across the grass. Chapter 11. Opportunity. Morning light filtered through the heavy silk curtains, casting a narrow golden beam on the floor. Lin Ji opened her eyes, the first sensation being the emptiness and chill beside her. She bolted upright, instinctively reaching for the adjacent pillow, finding it smooth and the sheets cold. With only a lingering hint of cedar in the air to attest to the man's presence from the night before, he was gone. Lin Ji exhaled deeply, the tension that had gripped her throughout the night finally dissipating. Alone on the vast bed, the oppressive feeling that had nearly suffocated her temporarily vanished. Almost simultaneously, a gentle knock echoed at the bedroom door, and maids entered in succession, carrying toiletries and garments. Their movements remained respectful, precise, and silent, akin to programmed automatons. "Miss, good morning. Please wash up and change. Breakfast is ready," the leading maid said with a slight bow. Lin Ji complied, allowing them to attend to her. Warm water, soft towels, and luxurious skincare products were all meticulously arranged. She gazed at the carefully groomed reflection in the mirror, dressed in a pale yellow knee-length dress. Appearing fresh and innocent, embodying the image of a well-behaved guest. Breakfast was laid out in the room's adjoining dining area, the table adorned with an exquisite English breakfast and various tea delicacies. Lin Ji sat down, picked up her knife and fork, and casually remarked to the maid standing nearby, "Shall we share? There's far too much for me to finish." The maid immediately bowed, her tone respectful yet firm. "Thank you, miss, but we have already dined. Please enjoy your meal." Lin Ji did not press further, leisurely consuming her food while her mind raced. An opportunity. She needed a moment to divert everyone's attention and act independently. At that moment, a slightly older, more composed maid, seemingly the head of the household staff, entered. She was the housekeeper, Anna. "Miss, the gentleman has had an unexpected matter to attend to this morning and has departed for Italy with Mr. Marco. He is expected to return tomorrow evening." Anna's voice was steady, devoid of any emotion. "The gentleman instructed that all your needs be met. Do you have any special requests for lunch or dinner today?" "Italy, not returning until tomorrow night." Lin Ji's heart leaped with exhilaration, nearly causing her joy to spill forth. Quickly, she lowered her head, feigning concentration on cutting the sausage on her plate, pinching her thigh to suppress the smile, threatening to break free. When she raised her head again, her face had regained its composure, even wearing a hint of ennui. "Oh, nothing special comes to mind. I just find myself missing Chinese cuisine." She deliberately spoke with hesitation, as if making a trivial request. Anna pondered for a moment. The estate's chef excelled in French and Italian cuisine, and Chinese food was not his forte. However, recalling the gentleman's cold instructions to fulfill her every wish as long as she remained within the main house, she replied cautiously, "Very well, Mississippi. I will do my utmost to arrange it. However, it may take some time to prepare, and dinner might be slightly delayed." "That's fine. A delay is perfect. I had a hearty lunch, and I am not too hungry for dinner." Lin Ji waved her hand dismissively, then took the opportunity to suggest, after breakfast, "I would like to take a stroll in the garden. Is that permissible?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Anna's face. With the gentleman absent, allowing the young lady to roam alone seemed somewhat risky. Yet, gazing into her clear, innocent eyes and observing her well-behaved demeanor, and considering the gentleman's special regard for her, Anna did not wish to provoke this esteemed guest with excessive restrictions, potentially inciting the gentleman's displeasure. Of course, Mississippi Anna ultimately nodded. "But please remain in the main area of the garden and do not wander too far. Be sure to return before dark." "Rest assured, Anna. I merely wish to take a leisurely walk and get some fresh air," Lin Ji replied with a sweet and grateful smile. After breakfast, Lin Ji feigned fatigue from a restless night, requesting that all the maids leave the room. The moment the door closed, she nearly leaped for joy. An opportunity. This was a fortuitous chance. Suppressing her excitement, she immediately sprang into action. She quietly opened the large wardrobe, beginning her search. The extravagant dresses and high heels were clearly unsuitable for escape. Patiently rummaging, she finally discovered a few sets of more casual attire and several pairs of soft flats tucked away in the deepest recesses of the closet. Selecting a dark gray tracksuit and a sturdy pair of soft-soled shoes, she carefully concealed them beneath the mattress. Next, she scoured the room for any potentially useful tools. From the desk, she stealthily pocketed a sharp metal bookmark and a box of matches. The bookmark might assist her in opening the door to the stone house. While the matches would provide illumination, her phone had already been confiscated by Lorenzo. These small tools offered her a faint sense of security. Throughout the day, Lin Ji oscillated between excitement and anxiety. She forced herself to lie in bed, pretending to nap, conserving her energy while remaining alert to any sounds outside the door. In her mind, she repeatedly rehearsed the plan for the evening, using the opportunity of her walk to approach the stone house at the northwestern corner of the garden, seeking the entrance to the underground passage. As evening approached, Anna arrived to inform her that dinner was ready. Having taken a bit longer than usual due to the search for a Chinese chef, Lin Ji's heart swelled with joy. The delay meant the night would be darker, more favorable for her. Dinner proved to be quite authentic. Kung Pao chicken, stir-fried seasonal vegetables, and even a small bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall. Lin Ji's appetite surged. She knew she needed to replenish her strength. As she ate, she feigned nonchalance and praised the culinary skills, all the while feeling as if a rabbit were thumping wildly in her chest. After dinner, the sky had darkened. Lin Ji picked up a light jacket and said to Anna, "Anna, I'm going for a stroll in the garden. Anna glanced outside at the deepening twilight, still hesitant. Miss, it's getting dark. Would you like Mary or Sophie to accompany you? Enough. Lin Ji immediately declined, a harmless smile adorning her face. I simply wish to take a stroll nearby, to enjoy a moment of solitude. Rest assured, I shall return shortly. Her tone carried an undeniable insistence. Anna, recalling her master's instructions, ultimately dared not defy her too greatly and nodded in acquiescence. Then please, do take care and do not stray too far. Very well, thank you. Anna. Lin Ji turned and walked toward the side gate leading to the garden, her steps light and buoyant. Behind her, Anna watched her retreating figure, her brow furrowing slightly. Sensing an unease that she could not quite place, yet she ultimately turned away to attend to her other duties. The early summer night enveloped the air with a fragrant blend of roses and earth. The garden's lampposts had already illuminated, casting a soft, amber glow along the path. Lin Ji inhaled a breath of the cool air, forcing herself to maintain a leisurely pace. She ambled slowly along the main path, occasionally pausing to feign admiration for the various flowers silhouetted against the night sky, while her peripheral vision remained vigilant, scanning her surroundings. In the distance, the warm light of the main residence flickered, and from time to time, she could catch glimpses of servants moving about. The garden was tranquil, accompanied only by the chirping of insects and the faint strains of classical music wafting from afar. She carefully avoided any potential patrolling guards, progressing discreetly toward the northwestern corner. As she approached that area, the illumination grew sparser, and the shadows deepened. Her heartbeat quickened with each step closer, her palms slightly damp from anxiety. At last, the silhouette of an ivy-clad stone house emerged not far ahead, concealed beneath the branches of towering oak trees, resembling a silent black behemoth. The surroundings were eerily quiet, starkly contrasting with the ambience of the main garden. The exhilaration of impending victory mingled with an undercurrent of fear, causing her breath to quicken. She glanced back at the brightly lit main residence, a symbol of captivity and control. In stark contrast, the darkness ahead represented freedom and the risks of the unknown. Gritting her teeth, she resolved not to hesitate any longer and, utilizing the shadows cast by the trees and shrubs, she stealthily advanced toward the stone house that might harbor her escape. Chapter 12. The Path to Freedom. The wooden door of the stone house, having succumbed to years of neglect, appeared somewhat warped, and its lock was an antiquated brass mechanism. Lin Ji leaned against the cold stone wall, inhaling deeply as she retrieved a metal bookmark from her pocket. One end of the bookmark had been stealthily sharpened against the stone. Using the faint moonlight filtering through the door's crack, she cautiously inserted the pointed tip into the keyhole. Her heartbeat drummed like a war drum, echoing through the stillness of the night. Her hand trembled slightly from nervousness, beads of sweat forming on her brow. Holding her breath, she gently manipulated the lock mechanism by feel. Seconds stretched into an eternity, and just as she was on the verge of despair, she heard a soft click. The bolt sprang open. A gust of air, mingled with mildew, dust, and damp earth, rushed forth. Lin Ji felt a surge of joy as she carefully pushed the door ajar, slipping inside and gently closing it behind her, wary of making excessive noise. Inside the stone house, darkness enveloped her, rendering her unable to see even her own hand. The air was stagnant and frigid, causing her to shiver. She trembled as she struck a match, the dim glow flickering in the void, barely illuminating her immediate vicinity. The interior was cluttered with discarded gardening tools, broken flower pots, and thick cobwebs, layers of dust blanketing everything. Remembering Marco's words, she knew the entrance should be near the tool shed. Holding the match aloft, she cautiously navigated the space, occasionally stumbling over debris that made a jarring sound in the silence. At last, behind a heap of broken pottery and decaying burlap sacks in the corner, she discovered a heavy wooden plank with iron rings at its edges. The dust covering it suggested it had not been disturbed for ages. A flicker of hope ignited within her. Ignoring the filth, she temporarily wedged the match into a crevice in the wall and exerted all her strength to shift the debris weighing it down. Dust billowed into the air, choking her and nearly bringing tears to her eyes. She covered her mouth and nose, waiting for the dust to settle before grasping the iron rings and pulling upward with all her might. The plank was heavier than she had anticipated, her teeth clenched, arms trembling from the effort, beads of sweat dripping onto the ground. Finally, a gap opened, releasing a chillier gust of wind laced with the scent of earth. A tunnel. The realization brought her joy. There was indeed a passage. Ignoring her fatigue, she fully lifted the plank to reveal a dark opening that extended downward, just wide enough for a person to pass through. Rough stone steps led into the depths of the inky void. A cold breeze wafted up from below, carrying a damp scent that, while unsettling, indicated that air was circulating. This suggested that the tunnel's far end might lead to the outside world. Instinctively fearful of the dark, Lin Ji felt a twinge of trepidation, as though the darkness were a great beast poised to consume her. Yet, the thought of that man who controlled everything, coupled with the fate of her imprisonment, made her yearning for escape overpower all else. She wiped the sweat from her brow and the tears from her eyes. Inhaling the cold, earthy air, lighting another match with determination, and resolutely descended the stone steps. The tunnel was narrow and low, forcing her to stoop as she moved forward. The ground was soft with earth and gravel, while the walls were damp and frigid stone. The matchlight was pitifully limited, illuminating only a few steps ahead. Surrounded by an abyss of darkness, the silence only broken by her own breath, heartbeat, and the soft rustle of her feet against the ground. One match quickly burned out, and she immediately struck another. The feeble flame flickered valiantly in the dark, her only solace and guide. She had no sense of how long she had been walking. Time had lost all meaning in the tunnel. Her legs felt leaden, her back ached from the prolonged bend, and the frigid air stung her lungs. Sweat soaked her back. Dust and cobwebs clung to her hair and cheeks, rendering her a pitiful sight. Fatigue and despair began to gnaw at her resolve. Was there even an end to this path? Might it merely be an abandoned dead end? Terrifying thoughts flooded her mind. However, each time she contemplated surrender, the image of Lorenzo's determined gray eyes and her parents' anxious faces materialized before her. No, she could not give up. The belief in returning home served as a beacon in the darkness, propelling her to inch forward, just as she felt on the verge of collapse. With only a few matches remaining, she noticed a faint point of light in the distance, distinct from the glow of the matches. Was it an illusion? She halted, rubbing her weary eyes, focusing intently on that direction. It was not a mirage. That light, though weak, undeniably existed. It was the exit. An overwhelming surge of joy instantly dispersed all her fatigue and fear. She felt as if she had received a shot of adrenaline, reigniting her strength as she hastened toward that glimmering beacon. The light grew larger, transforming from a mirror into a hazy glow, and the air seemed to become fresher. At last, she reached the end of the tunnel, panting heavily. The exit was partially obscured by withered vines and debris, yet the bright moonlight and urban lights shone through clearly. With exhilaration, she pushed aside the obstacles, scrambling out with hands and feet, greedily inhaling the long-awaited air, infused with the sense of automobile exhaust and the din of city life, relishing her newfound freedom. She found herself in a secluded alley. With an unremarkable brick wall behind her, the exit of the tunnel cleverly concealed behind a stack of discarded cardboard boxes. Beyond the alley lay the bright, bustling streets of London. She had miraculously emerged from a country estate straight into the city center. Overwhelmed with joy, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. Ignoring her soiled appearance, she hastily wiped the dust and traces of tears from her face with her sleeve and stumbled out of the alley. Pedestrians cast curious glances her way, but she paid them no mind. She was free, finally free. She gazed around, searching for a place that could assist her. Suddenly, she spotted the blue light sign of a police station not far away. Like a drowning person grasping a lifeline, she summoned her last ounce of strength and sprinted toward that symbol of safety and justice. Pushing open the glass door of the police station, the bright lights and warmth inside momentarily disoriented her. Behind the duty desk sat a portly, kindly middle-aged officer, engrossed in writing. Hearing the commotion, he looked up and, upon seeing the disheveled, dirt-streaked Lin Ji, appeared momentarily taken aback, his expression a mix of confusion and scrutiny. "Miss, are you all right? Do you need assistance?" the officer inquired, standing with a tone of professional caution. Lin Ji rushed to the desk, placing her hands on its surface, her voice a frantic jumble of excitement and fatigue. "Officer, please help me. I've been imprisoned at a manor in Hampstead. A man named Lorenzo DeSantis. He kidnapped me," she exclaimed, her voice hoarse with urgency. The officer furrowed his brow, clearly skeptical of her claims. He scrutinized the visibly distraught and disheveled young woman, attempting to discern the truth from her words. "Miss, please calm down. Speak slowly. You say you were imprisoned? Do you have any evidence? Who imprisoned you?" Lin Ji realized that her appearance might indeed make it difficult for anyone to believe her immediately. Embarrassed, she wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, only smudging the dirt further. She forced herself to regain composure, inhaling deeply before articulating as clearly as possible. "Officer, my name is Lin Ji, a student from China. I was unlawfully detained by Mr. DeSantis at his estate. I just escaped through a tunnel. Please believe me. May I use the telephone? I wish to contact my professor. He can verify my identity." The officer hesitated, observing the girl's earnest and desperate tears, and eventually nodded, pushing the desk phone toward her. "Very well, Mississippi. You may use this phone. Thank you. Thank you." Lin Ji responded, overwhelmed with gratitude, trembling as she extended her finger to dial Professor Melvin's number. Each beep resonated within her heart, filled with the exhilaration of survival and hope for the future. The ringing sounded like celestial music to her ears. However, just as she focused intently on waiting for the call to connect, a long, slender hand, adorned with a black leather glove, reached around from behind her, gently yet irresistibly pressing the hang-up button. The ringing ceased abruptly. Lin Ji felt as if her blood had turned to ice, her body stiffening as she slowly turned her head. Chapter 13. Astonishment. "Ji, you have truly been quite naughty." The deep male voice cut through the slightly chaotic background noise of the police station, each word emerging as if drawn from a frozen abyss, exuding a chilling aura. Lin Ji's blood ran cold, and she spun around, her pupils constricting in sheer terror. Lorenzo DeSantis loomed behind her, like a dark mountain that had suddenly materialized. He wore a knee-length black cashmere coat, the collar raised, accentuating his sharp jawline. His expression bore no evident anger, even appearing calm. Yet his deep gray eyes seethed with a frightening storm, fixated on her as if he intended to consume her whole. No, Lin Ji screamed instinctively, retreating behind the portly officer at the desk, clutching his uniform tightly, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Officer, help me. It's him. He is the one who imprisoned me. The officer, bewildered by this unexpected turn of events, stared at the imposing, well-dressed intruder before him. While feeling the violent tremors of the girl behind him, his professional instincts prompted him to step forward, attempting to block Lorenzo. Sir, may I ask who you are? Before he could finish, the glass door of the police station swung open once more. Butler Marco entered, flanked by two burly men in black suits. Their presence filled the already cramped duty room with an oppressive atmosphere. Marco, with an impassive expression, approached the portly officer and handed him a pure black business card, featuring only a gilded family crest and a phone number, devoid of any title or name. The officer, puzzled, took the card, but as his gaze fell upon the crest, his expression changed dramatically, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He straightened abruptly, as if scalded, and performed a formal salute to Lorenzo, his tone shifting. Your Excellency, I was unaware of your esteemed presence. Please forgive me. Lorenzo did not even lift his eyelids, his gaze penetrating the air, fixated coldly on Lin Ji, who was pale and cowering behind the officer. His look was icy and sharp, exuding an absolute authority that scrutinized all. Marco stepped forward, his voice steady yet undeniably assertive. As if carefully choosing his words, Officer, this lady is ours. She is my wife. Lorenzo coldly interrupted him, his voice low yet resonant throughout the duty room. DeSantis, madam. No, I am not. He is lying. He is lying. Lin Ji exclaimed, peering out from behind the officer, her voice frantic as tears streamed down her face. Officer, please believe me. I don't know him. He is a kidnapper. The officer's face twitched, torn between looking at Lorenzo and then at Lin Ji, and then at the weighty black card in his hand, his expression a tumult of hesitation and fear. He clearly recognized the vast power that the crest represented, far beyond his jurisdiction. Marco seized the moment to speak again, his tone laced with a sense of resignation. Officer, this is entirely a misunderstanding. The lady occasionally enjoys playing some rather extreme pranks with her husband. It seems this has gone a bit too far, and we sincerely apologize for disturbing you. As he spoke, he subtly nodded to his two subordinates, who immediately understood and advanced toward Lin Ji. Their movements were not aggressive, but carried an air of resolute authority that allowed no resistance. No, don't come any closer. What are you doing? Lin Ji shrank back in terror. But the limited space behind the desk left her with nowhere to escape. The two men swiftly seized her arms. Let me go? Help! Lin Ji cried out desperately, struggling and kicking, her tears mingling with the dirt on her face, leaving soiled streaks. The officer's lips moved as if he wished to speak, but ultimately, under Lorenzo's frigid gaze, he lowered his head, silently watching as Lin Ji was escorted out of the police station. The crushing weight of power was starkly evident in that moment. Lin Ji was half-dragged, half-supported into the back seat of a waiting black Rolls-Royce. Moments later, Lorenzo followed suit, bending to enter the vehicle and slamming the door shut behind him. The interior of the carriage is exceedingly spacious and opulent, with genuine leather seats exuding a chilling fragrance. Yet, the enclosed space, isolated from the outside world, resembles a mobile prison. The instant the door closes, all external sounds seem to vanish. An oppressive silence engulfs the interior, leaving only Lin Ji's frantic heartbeat resonating in her ears. She curls up in the corner of the expansive seat, striving to distance herself from the man beside her who emanates a terrifying aura, hardly daring to breathe. Lorenzo does not glance at her, nor does he utter a word. He simply leans back against the seat, eyes closed, his fingers unconsciously stroking the cold gemstone buttons on his coat sleeve. Yet, his silence is more suffocating than any roar. As the air within the carriage appears to solidify into ice, weighing heavily upon Lin Ji's chest, she can vividly sense the almost tangible fury radiating from him, like an invisible net that ensnares her tightly. He casts a sidelong glance at her disheveled appearance, clothes and trousers caked in dirt and dust, hair in disarray, a filthy little face, and eyes swollen from fear and tears. An unnamed fire burns within his chest. He has provided her with the most luxurious life, the finest in clothing, food, and shelter, yet she insists on presenting herself in such a pitiful, refugee-like state. Does she truly loathe being near him so? This realization pierces his heart like a venomous thorn, deepening the darkness in his gaze. The vehicle glides smoothly through the nocturnal splendor of London, the kaleidoscope of lights outside racing past, yet failing to illuminate the oppressive darkness within the carriage. Time becomes nebulous until the vehicle finally arrives at the familiar grand iron gates of Hampstead Manor. At the front of the main residence, Anna, the maid, is anxiously awaiting with several other maids, clearly having realized Lin Ji's absence, their faces etched with fear and unease. As the car comes to a halt, Anna hastens forward, ready to report, yet she halts as the rear door swings open, with Lorenzo stepping out first. He then turns, bending down to peer into the car. Upon seeing his outstretched hand, Linji instinctively recoils, wishing to exit on her own, but Lorenzo affords her no opportunity. With a swift motion, he lifts her from the vehicle in a horizontal embrace. Ah! Linji gasps, instinctively struggling against him. Do not move. Lorenzo glowers down at her, his voice a deep, terrifying rumble. His gaze is devoid of warmth, only conveying a nearly cruel warning, as if to say that should she dare to resist further, the consequences would be dire. Linji is immobilized by that gaze, her struggles ceasing instantly as she stiffens in his hold, not daring to move. Lorenzo strides purposefully toward the manor entrance, seemingly oblivious to Anna and the others approaching. Anna observes the pitiful, trembling figure of the young lady in Lorenzo's arms, alongside his frigid, deathly expression, causing her face to blanch in terror as she hastily follows. Upon reaching the entrance, Lorenzo does not pause, merely issuing a cold command that resonates clearly in every ear: prepare hot water. He hesitates momentarily, a shadow of dark intent flashing in his gray eyes. I shall personally bathe her. This proclamation strikes like thunder, reverberating across the silent night sky. Anna and the maid stand frozen, their faces displaying disbelief and shock. Meanwhile, Linji feels as though her blood has turned to ice at the instant she hears those words, an overwhelming terror engulfing her like a tide. Chapter 14. An unusual baptism in the main bedroom's bathroom. Steam envelopes the air, rich with the fragrance of expensive lavender and lily essential oils. A stark contrast to the current tension. The enormous marble bathtub is filled with hot water, rose petals floating atop the surface. Yet Linji feels as though she is being pushed toward an execution chamber. Lorenzo strides into the bathroom, clutching her tightly, his arms akin to iron bands, allowing her no chance of escape. The mist obscures his harsh contours, but fails to soften the icy rage in his eyes. Let go of me. I can wash myself. Linji's voice, sharp with fear, pierces the air as her feet touch the ground, recoiling sharply until her back meets the cold porcelain wall. Her hands gripping the collar of her already filthy tracksuit, her knuckles whitening from the force. Lorenzo stands before her, his towering figure blocking most of the light, shrouding her in shadow. He does not speak, merely gazing into her with his fathomless gray eyes, as if scrutinizing a disobedient possession. The longer his silence lingers, the more Linji's fear swells. I said, I can do it myself. She nearly screams, tears uncontrollably spilling forth, mingling with the dirt on her face, leaving a trail of despair. Suddenly, Lorenzo moves. He swiftly seizes her wrist, holding her tightly as she clings to her collar. The force is astonishing, sending a jolt of pain through her wrist, compelling her to release her grip. In that fleeting moment, another hand yanks down her tracksuit, tearing it away. The ripping sound of fabric echoes painfully in the bathroom. The gray tracksuit, along with the flimsy undergarments beneath, is brutally pulled down to her waist, instantly revealing her smooth shoulders and a large expanse of pale skin on her back. The sudden contact with the cool air sends a shiver through Linji, raising goosebumps all over her body. No, she cries out in a mixture of shame and fury, instinctively wrapping her arms around her chest, curling up to shield herself. Tears of terror rush forth, not due to the chill, but from the humiliation of being stripped of her dignity. Lorenzo's actions momentarily falter. His gaze falls upon the elegant lines of her exposed skin, the smooth curve of her back, glistening like pearls in the diffused light and steam. His throat constricts involuntarily, a flicker of barely perceptible heat igniting in his eyes, but it is quickly smothered by a colder frost. He recalls her desperate escape, her accusations and rejections at the police station, and the fire within him roars anew, consuming his rationality. He grants her no further opportunity to resist, bending down to lift her effortlessly. Amidst Linji's cries, he unhesitatingly places her into the bathtub filled with hot water. With a splash, the warm water envelopes her body. But rather than comfort, she feels an overwhelming sense of shame. She curls up in the corner of the spacious tub like a frightened rabbit, her arms tightly wrapped around her knees, hiding her most vulnerable parts beneath the surface and the floating petals, revealing only a pale, tear-streaked face. Her dark hair clinging to her cheeks, her eyes brimming with fear, humiliation, and hatred. Lorenzo appears oblivious to her despair. He rolls up his shirt sleeves, exposing his muscular forearms, and retrieves a bathing sponge, squeezing fragrant soap onto it, beginning to wash her with an impassive, almost mechanical demeanor. His actions lack tenderness, bordering on brutality, as the sponge scrubs against her arms and back with undeniable force. Do not touch me. Go away. Linji struggles desperately, splashing water with her hands, drenching the front of Lorenzo's expensive shirt. Yet he remains unfazed, effortlessly restraining her flailing arms with one hand, continuing his cleansing task. His fingers occasionally brush against her delicate skin, radiating heat that sends shivers coursing through her. This is more terrifying and nauseating than outright violence. She bites her lip, ceasing her screams, and simply glares at him with her tear-filled black eyes. As the prolonged, one-sided ordeal finally drew to a close, Lin Ji felt as though a layer of her very being had been stripped away, leaving her both mentally and physically exhausted. Lorenzo enveloped her in a large, soft towel, wrapping her from head to toe before lifting her once more and exiting the bathroom. The bedroom was illuminated only by a solitary bedside lamp, casting a dim, ambiguous glow. He placed her upon the vast bed, the soft mattress yielding beneath her weight. Once freed, Lin Ji instinctively rolled to the farthest corner of the bed, cocooning herself tightly in the blanket, leaving only her terrified eyes visible, vigilantly fixed on the man at the edge of the bed. All composure and wisdom had fled her. She was left with nothing but primal fear and the instinct for self-preservation. Lorenzo stood silently by the bed, making no further move or utterance. He simply gazed at the trembling cocoon that was her, his expression an intricate tapestry of emotions, smoldering anger, a fierce possessiveness, and perhaps an unacknowledged irritation at her palpable fear of him. Time passed in a suffocating silence, each second stretching into an eternity. The air within the blanket grew thin, and Lin Ji's heart raced uncontrollably. She strained to listen for any sound from outside. Was it silent now? Had he departed? Fear and a flicker of curiosity propelled her to cautiously peel back the blanket just enough to reveal her eyes for a furtive glance. However, her gaze collided instantly with a pair of deep gray eyes. He had not left. He was perched on the single sofa beside the bed, watching her intently, though she could not tell for how long. In the dim light, his gaze resembled that of a lurking leopard, deep, focused, and swirling with emotions she could not comprehend, mingling anger, scrutiny, and a potent possessiveness that sent shivers down her spine. Terrified, Lin Ji recoiled back under the blanket, her heart pounding as if it would burst from her chest. Then came the subtle sound of fabric rubbing together. She froze, paralyzed with fear. Next, she heard the unmistakable sound of a belt buckle being unfastened and a zipper sliding down, a deeper dread ensnaring her. Unable to resist, she stealthily lifted a corner of the blanket again, only to witness a sight that shattered her composure. Lorenzo stood by the bed, leisurely unbuttoning his shirt. One button, two buttons, revealing the chiseled contours of his collarbone and muscular chest. Then, he discarded his shirt onto the carpet. The light played upon his bronzed torso, casting shadows and highlights, each muscle radiating latent power, the family tattoo on his chest more pronounced and commanding than ever. His hand then moved towards the button of his trousers. Ah! Lin Ji let out a sharp cry, her sanity fracturing in an instant. She sprang from the bed, disregarding the towel wrapped around her, and dashed toward the door, her mind consumed by a singular thought: escape, flee from this terrifying man. However, as soon as her feet hit the ground, a powerful force yanked her back. A corner of the towel was seized with such force that it sent her tumbling into a searing embrace. The air thickened with his presence. You think you can run? Chapter 15. Defeat. Lorenzo's kiss descended upon her like a tempest, infused with searing anger and an irresistible dominance. His lips pressed heavily against hers, attempting to breach her tightly sealed defenses. Lin Ji's mind blanked, leaving only the most instinctual urge to resist. She clenched her teeth, her entire body tense as stone, her nails digging sharply into her palms, bringing a sting that paled in comparison to the fear and humiliation swelling within her. Sensing her rigidity and defiance, Lorenzo's fury intensified. With a powerful grip, he lifted her effortlessly, striding to the bed and tossing her onto the soft mattress. The sudden weight caused the mattress to dip deeply, propelling Lin Ji upward and then back down in a dizzying whirl. Yet, his kiss persisted, relentless as a parasite, growing only more fervent. His tongue sought to pry open her clenched teeth with punitive force. The metallic taste of blood mingled with the air as Lin Ji, caught in a tempest of anxiety and fear, bit down on her own lip. Salty tears flowed like a torrent, cascading down her cheeks and mingling with the blood, creating a bitter, desperate flavor. This taste, combined with the violent tremors coursing through her, struck Lorenzo's mind, filled with rage and desire, like a cold needle piercing through the haze. He abruptly halted, lifting his head. Before him was a face, pale and tear-stained, resembling a flower washed by rain. Those once bright, intelligent eyes were now clouded by overwhelming fear and profound sorrow, akin to dimmed stars, stripped of their brilliance. Tears continued to spill, washing away the redness on her face, rendering her strikingly vulnerable and pitiable. Her lower lip, swollen and bleeding, curled as she curled into herself, resembling a small creature, defenseless and trembling under the predator's claws. This was not her. Lorenzo felt an invisible hand constrict his heart, a sharp pain radiating through him. This was not the brave and composed girl he had encountered in that dark alley, nor the confident young scholar who shone brightly in the halls of academia. The woman before him was stripped of courage, fear, and the sorrow he had inflicted upon her. An unprecedented sense of defeat washed over him like a chilling tide, overpowering his anger and desire. He wished to conquer her, to have her willingly remain by his side, rather than reduce her to this broken state through violence. He had constructed a formidable cage with his power and influence, yet it seemed to have gradually extinguished the very qualities that drew him to her her bravery, independence, and intelligence. As he restrained her arms, his grip unconsciously slackened. Lin Ji sensed the shift in his demeanor but dared not relax. She merely closed her eyes, silently weeping, bracing herself for his next act of aggression. Yet, the anticipated violation did not occur. Instead, she felt the weight on her diminish, the oppressive heat retreating from her. Lorenzo slowly rose from her, standing at the edge of the bed. He faced away from the fireplace's light, his features obscured in shadow, revealing only the taut line of his jaw and the subtle rise and fall of his chest. The bedroom fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the crackling of burning wood and Lin Ji's muffled sobs. Time seemed to stand still. After an indeterminate period, his low, hoarse voice shattered the stillness, each word emerging with great effort from the depths of his throat. "I will wait for you." He paused, as if gathering strength or battling the primal urge to possess her without restraint, "until the day you willingly choose to stay." With that, he did not cast another glance in her direction but turned abruptly, striding toward the door. His sturdy back appeared unnaturally rigid and solitary in the firelight, as if burdened by an immense weight. He opened the door with a forceful motion, then slammed it shut behind him with a resounding crash that made the frames on the walls tremble. In the vast bedroom, Lin Ji was left alone. Once she confirmed he had truly departed, the taut string within her snapped. She could no longer suppress her emotions, burying her face deep into the pillow that still held his lingering scent as she wept uncontrollably. The relief of surviving, the humiliation of near violation, the dread of the future, and an intricate web of emotions that even she could not comprehend coalesced into scalding tears that surged forth. Her body trembled as she sobbed, nearly gasping for breath. The night's ordeal felt like a nightmare, shattering all her hopes for freedom. That man was so powerful, so irresistible, that even the police station could not serve as her sanctuary. Yet, amidst the torrent of tears, beneath the depths of terror and despair, a quiet defiance and stubbornness began to take root. She would not give up. As long as she drew breath, she would continue to seek the path home, the chance to reunite with her parents and return to a semblance of normalcy. Today's failure did not signify an end. Rather, it illuminated the strength of her adversary and the perilousness of her situation. She needed to be more cautious, more patient, awaiting the next fleeting opportunity. The moonlight outside streamed in coldly, contrasting sharply with the warmth of the hearth within. Lin Ji wept for a long time, until her tears ran dry and her strength was depleted, finally succumbing to a drowsy sleep, her face still marked with tear stains, curled up in a posture filled with unease and weariness. Meanwhile, at the end of the corridor in the study, Lorenzo stood before the expansive floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of strong liquor in hand, yet he did not take a sip. He gazed into the somber night outside, his gray eyes swirling with an unfamiliar sense of confusion and defeat. It seemed he had gained her physically, yet her heart felt more distant than ever. The words "I will wait for you" willingly echoed like a spell, a shackle he had placed upon himself. This hunt, which he had believed was certain to succeed, suddenly seemed fraught with uncertainty. For the first time, Lorenzo DeSantis felt a profound sense of helplessness on the path to conquest. Chapter 16. Helplessness since that night. The master bedroom of Hampstead Manor appeared to house a beautiful yet silent Eastern porcelain doll. Lin Ji no longer exchanged a single word with Lorenzo, regardless of whether he appeared with rare gentleness or his usual undeniable dominance. She merely remained quietly in her armchair by the window or curled up in the corner of the bed, her vacant gaze fixed on the meticulously trimmed yet endless scenery beyond. She no longer resisted his occasional approaches. When he forcibly embraced her, her body was soft and compliant, yet as cold as an inanimate jade stone. The once vibrant blackness of her eyes had lost all its luster, leaving only the quiet ashes of desolation. The gifts Lorenzo sent became increasingly frequent and extravagant. A custom necklace from Van Cleef Arpels, an antique diamond bracelet from Tiffany, a velvet box containing rare colored diamonds, brought to her by the maid with utmost care. Yet she did not even raise her eyelids, as if those dazzling stones were no different from pebbles by the roadside. Her world seemed to consist solely of that window and the books she had perused countless times within the room. Her silence and increasingly gaunt figure acted like an invisible whip, repeatedly striking Lorenzo, watching her gradually wilt like a flower deprived of moisture. His heart often pierced with sharp pangs. Countless nights, he stood at her bedside, gazing at her furrowed brow, even in slumber, his knuckles whitening from tension. He could not let her go. That thought was seared into the depths of his soul, yet witnessing her suffering filled him with an unprecedented sense of powerlessness. One morning, the elderly butler Marco observed Lorenzo dining alone in the study. His expression somber and cautiously spoke. "Miss Lin has been cooped up in the manor for too long. It may not be beneficial for her body or mind. Perhaps we could take her out for a stroll? A change of scenery might lift her spirits." Lorenzo halted his grip on the silver knife. He lifted his gaze, a glint of sharpness flashing in his gray eyes, then fell into contemplation. Taking her out? The risks were apparent. She was like a bird perpetually seeking an opportunity to escape her cage. Yet, seeing her in such a lifeless state, he would rather face the risk of her fleeing again than watch her wither away in the gilded cage he had crafted for her. After much deliberation, His fingers lightly tapped on the mahogany table, and he made a decision. Prepare to go to that small town in Cotswolds, Burford. He chose a place known for its picturesque landscapes, instructing the local authorities, I require absolute clearance of the area. Furthermore, his voice suddenly turned cold, carrying an undeniable command. Elevate security to the highest level. I want not even a single unfamiliar fly near her. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I will arrange it immediately. Marco bowed and silently exited the study. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Lin Ji maintained her usual posture, curled up on the sofa by the window. An open physics treatise resting on her lap, yet she had not turned a single page, her gaze fixed blankly on a bird attempting to fly over the wall outside. Lorenzo entered, his footsteps eliciting no reaction from her. He approached her side, leaning down, instinctively intending to draw her into his embrace. This time, when he lifted her, he was taken aback by how astonishingly light she felt, like a feather. He set her down at the edge of the bed, kneeling on one knee to compel her gaze to meet his. He endeavored to soften his tone, though it felt somewhat awkward for him. I want to take you out for a walk, all right? We're going to Burford, a beautiful little town you will surely enjoy. Like a marionette. Lin Ji's eyelashes fluttered ever so slightly at the mention of going out. Within the depths of her long silent black eyes, a faint spark flickered, though it vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Yet Lorenzo, intently observing her, caught it. That momentary glimmer made his heart feel as if it had been struck. It brought a subtle joy at seeing her respond, juxtaposed with a deep sorrow. Did she yearn so desperately to leave him, to escape this manner? Even a brief moment of freedom could stir ripples in her once stagnant gaze. He suppressed the tumult of emotions rising within him, standing up to restore his usual composure. Prepare yourself. We will depart in half an hour. Half an hour later, a modified black Rolls-Royce Phantom, equipped with top-tier bulletproof features, halted at the main entrance of the manor. Lorenzo personally opened the car door for Lin Ji, assisting her into the spacious back seat. He noted that today she dutifully donned a pale blue cashmere dress he had selected, layered with a matching coat. Though still silent, her eyes frequently darted, almost greedily, across the scenes beyond the car window. The convoy slowly exited the heavy iron gates of the manor, flanked by 3 escort vehicles, closely guarding the Rolls-Royce. Above, even a helicopter followed closely at low altitude, ensuring the safety of their route, monitoring all movements in the vicinity. The interior of the car was opulent and serene, akin to a moving fortress. Lorenzo attempted to break the silence, gesturing to the passing scenery outside, his deep voice introducing, "Look over there. That grove belongs to the Royal Botanic Gardens, and the Thames River is just ahead. From this angle, it is quite beautiful." Lin Ji remained quietly attentive, her face turned toward the window, her gaze hungrily tracing the rapidly receding scenes of the world beyond. Ordinary houses, pedestrians, playful children, and running pets. Once familiar sights, now appearing extraordinarily precious. She did not respond to a single word from Lorenzo, as if he were merely an inconsequential narrator. Luo Renzu observed her profile, deeply engrossed in the view outside the window. The sunlight cast a soft halo on her delicate skin, yet it failed to penetrate the tranquility hidden within her eyes. A tumult of emotions surged within him, akin to a jar of mixed flavors toppled over. He felt a bittersweet joy at her newfound response to the world beyond the estate, even if it was so subdued. Yet his heart ached knowing that this reaction concealed a profound rejection of him and all that he represented. His hand, resting on his knee, involuntarily clenched, knuckles turning pale. Despite possessing formidable power capable of emptying a town or deploying helicopter escorts, he was unable to elicit a genuine smile from this fragile Eastern girl or hear her utter a word devoid of fear. Leaning back against the chair, he closed his eyes and rubbed his brow, a wave of fatigue and helplessness washing over his usually resolute face. In this confinement masquerading as love, who was truly tormenting him? The convoy glided smoothly away from the hustle and bustle of London, gradually entering the picturesque countryside of England. Outside the car window, vast expanses of green pastures unfolded, with flocks of sheep resembling scattered pearls, while ancient stone walls and lush woodlands painted a quintessentially British pastoral scene. Yet beneath this seemingly serene journey lay an undercurrent of unspoken control and silent rebellion. Chapter 17. Interrogation. The town of Beaufort nestled by the banks of the Windrush River, as though it had stepped out from a classical English painting. Honey-colored limestone cottages were arranged in an orderly fashion along the winding slopes, while the gentle flow of the river could be heard beneath the ancient stone bridge, and in the distance, the spire of St. Mary's Church reached towards the azure sky. However, beneath this tranquil facade lurked an invisible tension. Luo Renzu walked alongside Lin Ji on the cobblestone main street, his tall, imposing figure contrasting sharply with her slender, silent demeanor. Not far behind them, at least a dozen subordinates clad in casual attire, yet exuding a fierce presence, scanned the surroundings with hawk-like vigilance, ensuring every corner was under control. Further away, indistinct figures lingered at alleyways and behind windows, forming an invisible web of surveillance. The town's residents and a few scattered tourists had long been cleared away, Those permitted to remain in their shops peered through glass windows. Their gazes filled with a mixture of curiosity, fear, and a hint of awe as they discreetly observed this extraordinarily unusual pair. Is it beautiful here? Luo Renzu slightly turned his head to Lin Ji, who had remained silent, his deep voice attempting to break the stillness. Do you like it here? He yearned for a ripple to emerge from the depths of her silence. Lin Ji hesitated for a moment, finally lifting her downcast eyelids. Her gaze swept over the bodyguards, who seemed casual yet were ever watchful, and a barely perceptible smirk graced her lips. Her cold voice, as delicate as shattered jade, responded. What beauty is there with so many following us? She spoke, despite the sharpness of her words, to Luo Renzu, who had endured her profound silence for days. It was akin to a heavenly melody. An indescribable joy surged within him, softening even the stoic contours of his face. Without a moment's hesitation, he raised his hand and made a succinct gesture in the air. Like machines receiving precise commands, his subordinates swiftly and silently sprang into action. Most retreated to a greater distance, melding into the shadows of the street or the buildings, leaving only 2 or 3 core guards at a respectful distance that allowed for prompt response without excessive intrusion. The atmosphere in the town seemed to lighten considerably, the suffocating pressure easing somewhat. Lin Ji appeared taken aback by his prompt compliance with her wish, a fleeting look of surprise crossing her eyes, which soon returned to calmness. Though her taut shoulders seemed to relax imperceptibly, they continued walking, the ambience feeling slightly less tense than before. Just then, several local children, under the cautious watch of a woman they likely called mother, timidly approached with small baskets containing homemade honey, jams, and some cookies. The children's wide eyes reflected both curiosity and a tinge of fear towards the invisible aura surrounding Luo Renzu. Lin Ji's attention was drawn to the quaint treats, her pace unconsciously slowing as her gaze lingered on the jars. However, upon glancing at Luo Renzu, her lips moved slightly, yet she ultimately diverted her gaze, maintaining her silence. Luo Renzu noted her subtle yearning. To his surprise, he did not delegate the task to his subordinates, but stepped forward himself, retrieving his wallet from his pocket and handing several bills to the eldest child with a relatively gentle tone, saying, I'll take one of each. He accepted the small paper bag containing honey and cookies, but did not immediately offer it to Lin Ji. Instead, he first opened a small jar of honey, using the accompanying wooden spoon to take a taste right before her eyes, exuding a cautiousness reminiscent of ancient nobles testing for poison, underscoring his undeniable authority that even food from the outside world must undergo his scrutiny. Once satisfied, he presented a small piece of cookie dipped in honey to Lin Ji. Lin Ji watched him complete this series of actions in silence before extending her hand to obediently accept the cookie from him. Their fingertips brushed against each other's warm palm, causing both to shiver slightly. She placed the cookie in her mouth, the sweet honey and crisp cookie melting upon her palate, a long-forgotten, simple, and genuine flavor. Lowering her eyelids, she savored it thoughtfully, her long lashes fluttering like butterfly wings. Luo Renzu attentively observed the subtle changes in her expression as she tasted the food, noting the slight puffiness of her cheeks. And an unfamiliar feeling of satisfaction and gentleness surged within him. He felt as if a crack had formed in his once-frozen heart. Tentatively, he asked in a tone that was almost exploratory, shall we have a drink after walking for a while? There is a nice cafe ahead. Lin Ji did not meet his gaze, but almost imperceptibly nodded her head. The cafe was housed within a Tudor-style building with centuries of history, its exposed wooden structure adorned with blooming flowers on the windowsill. However, in stark contrast to the bustling atmosphere outside the town, albeit a controlled one. The cafe interior was eerily empty, the only sound being the faint strains of classical music. Clearly, it had undergone a thorough clearing as well. The server, likely disguised by his subordinates, respectfully guided them to the best seat by the window. Luo Renzu pulled out a chair for Lin Ji, who silently sat down, her eyes fixed on the seemingly ordinary street scene outside. Yet the stiff forms of the occasional passers-by and their overly vigilant expressions betrayed the facade of tranquility. She lifted the beautifully crafted latte served by the server, taking a small sip. The rich aroma of coffee did little to dispel the heaviness in her heart. It's quite quiet here. Luo Renzu attempted to initiate conversation, yet he too found the atmosphere suffocating. He was accustomed to controlling everything, including the environment. But at this moment, he sensed that such excessive control was stifling his desire to witness any spark of vitality on her face. Lin Ji set down her coffee cup, the porcelain clinking against the tray with a crisp sound. She lifted her eyes to him, her voice calm, yet penetrating. I need to go to the restroom. Instinctively, Luo Renzu raised his hand to signal the female attendant standing nearby to follow. Am I to be followed, even to the restroom? Lin Ji's voice suddenly elevated, laced with evident inquiry and long-suppressed fury. Her once tranquil black eyes now blazed with 2 cold flames. What am I to you, Lorenzo? Am I merely your pet? Or a prisoner in your jail, unworthy of even basic privacy? Her questions pierced Lorenzo's heart like a chilling dagger, catching him off guard. He could see the clear pain and humiliation in her eyes, the flush of her cheeks revealing her agitation. A tumult of guilt and panic rendered his intended gesture frozen in midair. He dreaded encountering that look in her eyes. Of course not, he managed to articulate with difficulty, his voice sinking in tone, the formidable aura he usually exuded momentarily fracturing. He withdrew his hand, slightly shaking his head at the attendant female aide, silently instructing her to remain vigilant regarding the restroom's commotion. "You may go," he said to Lin Ji, his tone unexpectedly yielding. She cast a deep, inscrutable glance at him, filled with anger, sorrow, and perhaps a hint of triumph before standing and striding directly towards the restroom at the back of the cafe. As the door closed behind her, shutting out the world, she leaned against the cool door, feeling as if all her strength had been drained away. Raising her head, she gazed into the mirror, her complexion pale, dark circles under her eyes. Once bright, her gaze was now heavy with fatigue and profound sorrow, the calmness, vitality, and brilliance of your long extinguished. She extended her hand, trembling fingertips brushing against the icy mirror, as if yearning to touch the unfamiliar self she had become. Tears welled up without warning, blurring her vision. She stifled a sob, the choked, fragmented sound echoing in the small, silent space, filled with helplessness and despair. She had thought she had gained a modicum of insignificant freedom, only to discover that this so-called freedom was still under his stringent surveillance. This realization was more suffocating and humiliating than outright captivity. At that moment, a gentle voice, filled with concern yet unfamiliar, wafted through the door. "Miss, are you all right? I think I heard crying. Is something wrong?" This voice did not belong to any of Lorenzo's subordinates. Lin Ji's weeping abruptly ceased as she lifted her head, teary-eyed, towards the door, her heart tightening at this unforeseen occurrence. Chapter 18. The first encounter. The restroom door was gently pushed open, and Lin Ji, lowering her head, quickly wiped away the remnants of her tears with the back of her hand before stepping out. She deliberately slowed her breathing, attempting to calm her turbulent emotions. Yet the moment she lifted her gaze, she collided with a pair of ocean-blue eyes brimming with concern. Before her stood a young man of similar age, clad in a fitted light gray cashmere cardigan over a white Oxford shirt, exuding a gentle and refined demeanor, starkly contrasting with Lorenzo's aggressive assertiveness. He possessed the quintessential appearance of an English gentleman, his soft golden brown hair meticulously styled, his handsome features softening as he furrowed his brow upon seeing the traces of tears on her face, his eyes revealing unmasked surprise and worry. "Miss, are you truly all right?" His voice was as soothing as a spring breeze, imbued with a reassuring magnetism. Lin Ji instinctively touched her face, her fingertips meeting a cool dampness, and she hastily shook her head, her voice still tinged with the remnants of her tears. "No, I'm fine, thank you." However, her forced composure crumbled under the stranger's gentle concern, and the suppressed feelings of grievance and despair surged forth once more, her eyes warming as fresh tears cascaded uncontrollably. The sight of her vulnerable state stirred an inexplicable compassion within the young man. The beauty of this Eastern girl appeared so exquisite and fragile, especially in her current tear-streaked demeanor, igniting a powerful instinct to protect her. He offered her a clean, soft white handkerchief, one corner embroidered with an intricate, seemingly familial crest marked AW. "I am Arthur Wentworth, the owner of this cafe," he introduced himself, his tone calm and sincere. "You seem to be in quite a predicament. If you are willing to trust me, could you share what has transpired? Perhaps I can offer some assistance." His gaze was clear and candid, entirely unlike Lorenzo's deep, calculating gray eyes. This long-awaited, unselfish kindness shone like a faint light, illuminating Lin Ji's heart, which had been shrouded in fear and despair. Perhaps it was the prolonged suppression of her emotions, or the brief solitude granting her a moment of respite, or perhaps his gentle demeanor allowed her to lower her defenses. Lin Ji's taut nerves relaxed for a fleeting moment, and the fears, humiliations, and homesickness that had been pent up within her cascaded forth like a flood, accompanied by her sobs. She succinctly recounted how she had been imprisoned in the Hampstead estate, how her freedom had been taken from her, how that man, Lorenzo DeSantis, controlled her every move, and her longing to return to her family and a normal life. By the end, she was inconsolable, covering her face with her hands, her frail shoulders quaking violently from her sobs. Arthur listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with concern. He had heard of the power and darkness associated with the DeSantis name, yet he had not anticipated such a vast shadow would loom over such an innocent girl. Witnessing her suffering ignited a fierce anger and empathy within him. He had never felt such an impulse to confront a perilous adversary, solely to aid a stranger he had only just met. "Miss Lin," as her sobs quieted, Arthur's voice softened further, yet bore a reassuring firmness. "If you trust me, please follow my guidance moving forward. I will find a way to help you return safely to your country." Lin Ji raised her tear-streaked eyes, incredulous as she gazed upon him. His handsome face was etched with sincerity, his blue eyes resembling tranquil depths of the ocean, imparting an odd sense of reliability. "But your influence is so vast, you will be in danger. I cannot drag you into this." She fervently shook her head, torn between her fervent desire for freedom and the unwillingness to ensnare an innocent in this perilous whirlpool. Arthur, upon hearing her words, let a soothing smile grace his lips. dispelling the shadows that had settled upon his brow upon hearing her plight. "Trust me, I can help you, and I will be unharmed." His tone remained unhurried, imbued with the confidence characteristic of a scion of a well-bred, deeply rooted family. "For now, you must return to him without arousing any suspicion. Leave the rest to me." Lin Ji met his resolute gaze, her heart a mix of belief and skepticism, yet this was the only glimmer of hope she had seen in days. She nodded emphatically, as if grasping a lifeline. "All right, I will go out first." Taking a deep breath, she meticulously dried her tear-stained face with the handkerchief Arthur had provided, striving to compose her expression. "Remember, stay calm." Just as before, Arthur whispered from behind her. Lin Ji pushed open the restroom door, stepping back into the spacious main hall of the cafe. Luo Linzuo remained seated in his usual spot, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the table, his gray eyes occasionally glancing towards the restroom. Though he appeared calm, the taut line of his jaw betrayed a hint of inner agitation. Upon seeing Lin Ji emerge, his gaze immediately fixated on her, scrutinizing every subtle shift in her expression with piercing intensity. Lin Ji forced herself to disregard his penetrating stare, silently returning to her seat, lifting her now slightly lukewarm coffee, sipping it in small increments, and redirecting her gaze out the window, maintaining her customary silence. Yet, her heart raced, and her palms were slightly damp with anxiety. The sky gradually darkened, the remnants of the sunset casting a splendid orange hue over the honey-colored stone house. Luo Linzuo glanced outside before looking back at the excessively quiet Lin Ji across from him, feeling the unease that had arisen during her brief absence gradually subside, replaced by an urgent desire to bring her back under the complete control of his estate. "It is getting late. We should return," he stated, his voice regaining its usual steadiness. "We've walked quite a distance today. You must be tired." Lin Ji felt a pang of anxiety. Why was there still no word from Arthur? Casually, she cast a glance toward the interior of the cafe. At that moment, she caught sight of Arthur's figure flitting past the door of the inner hall. He nodded slightly at her, his gaze resolute, before vanishing once more. Although she still did not understand his exact plan, this small signal provided Lin Ji with immense encouragement. She took a deep breath, turned back to face Luo Linzuo, and made a conscious effort to lift the corners of her mouth, presenting him with a faint smile that was enough to leave him momentarily stunned. "All right," she replied softly, her voice still barely audible. Yet that fleeting smile was akin to a ray of sunlight piercing through a cloudy sky, striking Luo Linzuo's heart with unexpected force. He could scarcely believe his eyes. For the first time in many days, she had shown him an expression devoid of fear, numbness, or anger. Though her smile was faint and fleeting, it stirred within him an indescribable swell of ecstasy and hope. Could it be that today's outing had truly made a difference? Was she beginning to slowly accept her reality? "Then let us return at once," he said immediately, his tone tinged with an imperceptible urgency, as if fearing that this hard-won moment of alleviation might vanish at any moment. He rose, his movements appearing somewhat hasty, as he personally pulled out her chair and reached out to assist her. However, Lin Ji had already risen first, evading his touch. Luo Linzuo's hand paused in the air for a moment before he nonchalantly retracted it. "It is all right," he reassured himself. This was already a positive beginning. Once settled back into the rear of the Rolls-Royce, which resembled a mobile fortress, Lin Ji's heart remained suspended in uncertainty as the convoy gradually set off, leaving the town of Burford, now shrouded in twilight. She gazed at the rapidly receding scenery outside, her journey there marked by silent despair. While her return was infused with a nervous hope, she was unaware of the capabilities possessed by the man who called himself Arthur Wentworth, capable of countering a figure like Luo Linzuo de Santis, but he was her only chance. She must remain patient and cooperate. Luo Linzuo sat beside her, his gaze resting on her serene profile, his heart entwined with satisfaction and a lingering sense of unease. Her sudden gentle demeanor was sweet as honey, yet shrouded in a veil of uncertainty. He reached out, gently covering her hand resting on her lap, sensing her instant rigidity but refraining from withdrawing as he might have done before. This subtle change allowed the joy in his heart to eclipse his doubts. As night deepened, the convoy smoothly traversed the route back to the Hampstead estate, the lights of suburban London twinkling outside the car windows, while within, the two individuals harbored vastly different currents of emotion. Chapter 19. Unexpected turn. The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided smoothly along the country road leading back to the Hampstead estate, resembling a great black whale. The atmosphere inside was markedly different from their earlier journey. Luo Linzuo reclined in the leather seat, still maintaining his usual authoritative demeanor. Yet a hint of undeniable pleasure flickered in his deep gray eyes. His gaze frequently drifted to Lin Ji, who sat quietly looking out the window, her profile softened by the dimming light. Was it the excursion today that had brought about this change? Was it the scenery of that quaint town? The faint smile she had spontaneously offered him spread ripples in the depths of his heart, akin to a stone cast into a frozen lake. He even began to ponder that perhaps Marco's suggestion had merit. Occasional outings could help her slowly embrace her circumstances. He began to envision their next excursion, perhaps to Paris? Or Venice. She would likely find delight in those locales. Meanwhile, Lin Ji appeared calm on the surface, yet internally, she felt as though she had been cast into a lake stirred by pebbles, the waves rising tumultuously. Her fingertips unconsciously curled upon her knees, her mind echoing Arthur's words. Leave it to me. What plan could he possibly have? How could a mere cafe owner contend with a force like Luo Lenzuo de Santis? This hope felt as fragile as a flickering candle in the wind, yet it was the only light she could cling to amidst the encompassing darkness. She had to remain composed, without revealing any cracks in her facade. As the convoy traversed a relatively secluded stretch of road, dense woodlands flanked either side. With towering oaks and beeches casting heavy shadows in the twilight, the streetlights yet to fully illuminate the area. Suddenly, an explosive bang echoed ahead. The violent crash, accompanied by the screech of tires, shattered the tranquility of dusk. The lead escort vehicle was violently struck on the side by an ordinary-looking delivery truck that had abruptly appeared from nowhere, its body blocking the already narrow road. The entire convoy was forced to halt abruptly, the tires screeching against the pavement. Luo Lenzuo instantly shifted into a state of alertness, the fleeting sense of pleasure evaporating, replaced by a keen, predatory sharpness. Leaning forward, his gray eyes sharpened like an eagle's, he scanned the external environment. The thick woods were an ideal ambush location. He swiftly pulled Lin Ji, whose complexion had paled due to the sudden turn of events, close to him, shielding her with his body, while commanding the subordinate in the front passenger seat in a low tone. Go see what is happening. Resolve it quickly. His voice bore an undeniable authority, laced with a barely perceptible tension. Several subordinates promptly exited the vehicle, skillfully forming a defensive formation as they advanced to investigate. Heated voices soon erupted from the front, revealing a dispute between his men and the delivery truck driver, along with several bystanders who had appeared out of nowhere, the sounds echoing through the stillness of the woods. The conversation revolved around accountability and compensation, resembling an ordinary traffic accident dispute. However, Luo Lenzuo's brow furrowed deeper with each passing moment. He sensed an unusual air of danger lurking in the atmosphere. The coincidence of this incident, both in time and location, felt suspiciously orchestrated. Impatiently, he gestured to Marco outside. Pay them off. Double, triple. Get them to clear the road immediately. We cannot remain here any longer. A sense of unease began to gnaw at him. The woodland felt like a trap lying in wait. Marco took the order and hurried forward, attempting to resolve the issue with money swiftly. Initially, the other party seemed to relent, but soon, the argument escalated again, devolving into pushing and shoving. The situation began to spiral out of control, as the opposing group appeared to be larger than anticipated, each member robust and not resembling ordinary villagers. As Lorenzo's patience was on the verge of depletion, poised to order more stringent measures, the sudden crack of a gunshot pierced the twilight sky, startling a flock of birds from the trees. It was not the weapon of his own men. Accompanying the gunfire, 7 or 8 figures clad in black combat gear and masks burst forth from the thick underbrush and shadows of the forest flanking the road. They moved with remarkable agility, brandishing silenced pistols, and charged directly towards the Rolls-Royce where Lorenzo was seated. An ambush. Protect the sir. Marco's roar reverberated. Instantly, gunfire erupted like popping corn. Lorenzo's men reacted swiftly, taking cover behind the vehicle and engaging in fierce gunfire with the sudden attackers. Bullets struck the armored vehicle, producing dull thuds. And although the windows were bulletproof, spiderweb-like cracks began to form. Lorenzo shielded Lin Ji with his body, his expression dark and foreboding. With his gray eyes swirling with fury and murderous intent, he calmly directed the counterattack through a secure communicator, coordinating reinforcements from the rear, while closely monitoring the unfolding battle outside. His team was elite, quickly stabilizing their position and even suppressing the enemy. However, just as the situation appeared to be under control, an unnoticed figure in black, agile as a specter, stealthily emerged from the shadows of the forest on the opposite side of the Rolls-Royce. Utilizing the chaos and noise created by the skirmish as cover, he moved with lightning speed and abruptly yanked open the car door where Lin Ji was seated. She felt an overwhelming force pull her from the vehicle, and just as she was about to scream in terror, a gloved hand tightly covered her mouth while another arm constricted around her waist, swiftly dragging her away from the door. Hush! Lin Ji struggled desperately, fear gripping her instantly. Mr. Wentworth. A low, rapid voice whispered close to her ear, come with me. Wentworth. Arthur. The name pierced through her panic like a beam of light. She immediately ceased her struggle, realizing that this meticulously orchestrated incident and attack was indeed Arthur's assistance. She endeavored to cooperate with the black-clad figure as he half-dragged her swiftly toward the dense underbrush by the roadside. Meanwhile, on the other side of the vehicle, Lorenzo had just taken down an approaching attacker with precise gunfire. Sensing movement behind him, he turned abruptly, only to see the car door ajar, and Lin Ji being hastily dragged into the darkness by a black-clad figure. A heart-wrenching roar, mingled with rage and disbelief, erupted from the depths of Lorenzo's throat, even drowning out the gunfire. Instinctively, he lunged forward, but the remaining attackers seemed to have received some sort of directive, intensifying their fire. pinning him firmly behind the vehicle's cover. "Seize them. Do not let her be taken." Lorenzo's eyes flared with fury, shouting into the communicator, his gray irises now laced with bloodshot veins, embodying the madness and destructive rage of a prey being snatched away. Several of his men attempted to pursue, but the black-clad assailants fought while retreating, their movements sharp and efficient, evidently trained rigorously, vanishing swiftly into the thick, dim forest, cleverly setting obstacles and smoke to obstruct their pursuers. As the gunfire gradually ceased, the attackers retreated like ghosts, leaving behind a scene of chaos and injured personnel. Lorenzo forcefully pushed away a subordinate who attempted to check if he was hurt, resembling an enraged lion as he strode to the spot where Lin Ji had been taken. All that remained was trampled grass and the lingering scent of lilies in the air, a faint trace of her presence. She was gone, right before his eyes. In what he believed was a situation under his control, she had been forcibly abducted. Lorenzo stood frozen, his chest heaving violently, his clenched fists cracking from the strain, veins bulging on the back of his hands. His handsome visage was now marred with a chilling frost and an almost mad ferocity. The last rays of the setting sun cast long shadows on his tall frame, yet were imbued with an aura of desolation and destruction. He slowly lifted his gaze toward the dark forest from which Lin Ji had vanished, his deep gray eyes roiling with tumultuous waves. Every word a vow from the depths of hell. Find her, search all of Europe, and bring her back. Chapter 20. Return to dust on an autumn day in Beijing. The sky was a rare expanse of high, clear blue, with golden ginkgo leaves strewn like fragments of gold across the winding paths of Qinghua Yuan. 2 months had elapsed since that harrowing journey through Europe. Lin Ji, donned in a simple white lab coat, traversed the familiar campus. Sunlight filtering through the leaves and warming her, yet failing to penetrate the subtle darkness that had settled in the depths of her eyes. She had returned. Safely back to her parents, back to her familiar laboratory, to her parents, to her mentor Professor Melvin, and to all those who cared for her. She merely understated her absence as a temporary disconnect due to an unexpected academic exchange project following a flight delay. She omitted all the peril, captivity, struggles, and escape, burying that period deep within her heart, regarding it as a nightmare she wished never to recall. She even refrained from mentioning the invaluable ocean star diamond necklace, which she had meticulously locked away in the innermost drawer, resembling a talisman sealing away a dangerous past. Life seemed to have returned to its original course. She immersed herself wholeheartedly in her research. Her eyes, once filled with fear and tears, now sparkled with focused rationality before the microscope and experimental data. Her graduate thesis had been successfully completed, garnering high praise from her advisors, and she was on the brink of her graduation ceremony. Watching her gradually return to normalcy, her parents finally eased their anxious hearts, their faces once again adorned with smiles of relief. Yet only Lin Ji understood that certain things had quietly changed. In the quiet of the night, she would occasionally awaken from nightmares, cold sweat beading on her brow, haunted by those deep gray eyes filled with possessiveness. She would instinctively check the locks on her doors and windows, remaining particularly vigilant of any sudden, unfamiliar figures. She dedicated all her time and energy to her studies and research, a near-manic form of self-redemption, attempting to mask that period filled with irrational control with the rationality of the scientific world. She maintained secret communication with Arthur Wentworth, usually through encrypted messaging software. From his occasional narratives, she learned that the Wentworth family in England possessed an illustrious noble lineage along with significant industries and influence that should not be underestimated. Although they could not directly rival the vast and intertwined power of the DeSantis family, which permeated both the legal and illegal realms, they were certainly formidable in their own right. This also explained how Arthur was capable of orchestrating such a masterful rescue. Has he found out it was you? Lin Ji could not help but ask anxiously each time they communicated, having experienced Lorenzo's ruthless methods firsthand. On the other end of the communicator, Arthur's profile appeared as a gentle silhouette, his replies always imbued with reassuring strength. Rest easy, Ji. All traces have been meticulously handled. He cannot trace it back to the Wentworth family for now. Focus on preparing for graduation, future great scientist, and do not let the shadows of the past trouble you. His words, much like his persona, exuded an air of quintessential British gentlemanliness, marked by a serene thoughtfulness. They flowed like a warm current, soothing her restless heart. Thank you. Yes, without you, I truly do not know how I would have managed, she expressed, her heart swelling with gratitude as she typed the message. It is my privilege to assist you, Yace replied, followed by another message. By the way, I have prepared a graduation gift for you. I hope you will not refuse it. Lin Ji gazed at the screen, her cheeks slightly flushed. A unique bond had formed between her and Yace, forged through shared tribulations. Yet she struggled to clearly define this sentiment. I am sorry to trouble you. Not at all. Just receiving it will suffice. Wishing you a happy graduation, Ji. Meanwhile, far away in Hampstead Manor, London, the atmosphere stood in stark contrast to the crisp autumn air of Beijing. The heavy velvet curtains in the study were partially drawn, blocking the brilliant sunlight outside, leaving the room illuminated only by a few dim wall lamps. the air thick with the fragrant haze of cigars and aged whiskey. Lorenzo DeSantis stood before the fireplace, his tall figure cast in flickering light, yet radiating an indescribable gloom and agitation. He clenched a crystal glass, his knuckles turning white from the pressure. 2 months. Marco. He suddenly turned, his voice low and hoarse, like the growl of a cornered beast. As he violently splashed the remaining liquid from his glass into the fireplace, the flames surged with a loud crackle, illuminating his bloodshot gray eyes and the taut line of his jaw. Tell me, is there still no lead? A bunch of useless fools. He had lost his previous calm and composure. Over the past 2 months, his irritable temperament had become the norm. The abduction of Lin Ji before him had torn a wound in the world he controlled, with frustration and an almost uncontrollable possessiveness burning within him day and night. The old butler Marco stood respectfully in the center of the study, as always, yet his brow bore a weight of seriousness. Your Excellency, we have deployed every available channel and resource. That group acted with remarkable professionalism, their plans meticulously crafted, leaving almost no valuable clues at the scene. The vehicle was stolen, the weapon untraceable, and those involved seemed to have evaporated into thin air. This will take time. Time, Lorenzo scoffed, slamming the crystal glass onto a nearby low table with a jarring sound. I have given you too much time. I want to know who it is. Who dares to snatch her from my hands? I absolutely. He inhaled deeply, forcing himself to regain a measure of calm. A flicker of complex emotion passing through his gray eyes. At least we can confirm she has safely returned to China. This, he had verified through his own channels, brought a strange sense of relief to his furious heart. As long as she was safe, as long as she still existed in some corner of this world, he held the possibility of finding her and bringing her back to his side. Marco, keenly attuned to the subtle shifts in his master's emotions, cautiously spoke. Yes, Your Excellency. Miss Lin has safely returned to China and is back at campus. The situation in China is unique. The government places great importance on citizen safety, and the security network is tight. It would be extremely difficult and risky for our people to operate there quietly, especially targeting a prominent student from a prestigious university. It could easily provoke unnecessary international attention. So, Lorenzo's voice turned icy. Just because of safety, I must sit idly by and watch her slip from my grasp. Marco, I instructed you to resolve this, not to inform me of what is difficult. Marco fell silent for a moment, then stepped forward, lowering his voice to a barely audible level that only Lorenzo could hear, whispering a few words in his ear. His words were vague, yet fragments like collaborative party, academic exchange, and legal avenues could be discerned. As Lorenzo listened, his fury gradually transformed into a profound, more dangerous calculation. His gray eyes narrowed, pupils constricting in the dim light, akin to a predator locking onto new prey. He slowly straightened, his gaze once again directed outside, as if he could penetrate the distance to see that eastern figure he was determined to possess. Perhaps we can, he echoed Marco's words, the corners of his lips curling into a cold, determined arc. The air in the room thickened with an impending sense of gravity and danger due to this unfinished whisper. On opposite sides of the globe, autumn was in full swing. One was attempting to heal wounds under the sun, embracing rebirth, while the other was brewing a storm in the shadows, preparing for the next pursuit. Chapter 21. The ceremony in June in Beijing, as summer began to dawn. The Grand Hall of Tsinghua University was bustling with life, filled with youthful vigor and the joy of achievement. The sun shone brightly, filtering through the lush branches of the national sephora trees lining the road, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The air was infused with the faint fragrance of gardenias, mingling with the laughter and cheer of graduates. Lin Ji, adorned in her doctoral robe and cap, stood amidst her classmates. Her radiant face seemed to glow in the sunlight, with bright sparkles dancing in her dark eyes, embodying a serene acceptance of shedding burdens and a hopeful anticipation for the future. 2 months of stable campus life and dedicated research had served as the finest balm, quietly easing the scars left by that European nightmare. Beside her stood her proud parents, Lin Yizhou and Zhuang Mingshu, along with her beaming mentor, Professor Melvin, all genuinely delighted for her at this significant moment in her life. The graduation ceremony was solemn yet spirited. When Lin Ji, as an outstanding graduate representative, stepped onto the stage to receive her diploma, thunderous applause erupted from the audience. She bowed slightly, her gaze sweeping over the classmates and amiable mentors cheering for her, her heart swelling with gratitude and tranquility. She had finally buried the painful memories deep within, ready to wholeheartedly embark on a new scientific journey. After the ceremony, graduates and their families gathered outside the hall for photographs, the atmosphere light and joyous. Lin Ji was conversing with her parents and Professor Melvin, planning the forthcoming celebratory lunch, when a gentle voice with a hint of British accent resonated behind her. Ji, congratulations on your graduation. Lin Ji momentarily stiffened at the sound, incredulously turning around. There stood Yace Wentworth, clad in a well-tailored light beige summer suit, his golden brown hair and azure eyes complementing each other, radiating an aura of elegance and charm amidst the crowd. He held a beautifully wrapped, modestly sized gift box in his hands, his face adorned with a sincere and warm smile. "Yes, how could you be here?" Lin Ji exclaimed in surprise, her eyes widening as a complex swirl of emotions surged within her, joy at encountering a familiar face in a foreign land, intertwined with concern over his unexpected arrival. Such a significant moment. How could I miss it? Yace stepped forward, extending the gift box towards her, his gaze gently resting on her cheeks, which flushed with astonishment. "This is for you, a graduation gift. I hope you like it." Lin Ji accepted the gift, carefully unwrapping it under Yace's encouraging gaze. Inside was a custom-made crystal ornament, a clear and exquisite model intricately carved into the structure of a DNA double helix, with her name, graduation date, and a small inscription reading, "To the future star of science," elegantly etched on the base. This gift was not only expensive but also remarkable for its profound meaning, perfectly aligning with her identity and aspirations, reflecting the giver's thoughtful consideration. "This is too extravagant, Yace." "Thank you. I truly love it," Lin Ji said, her hand gliding over the cool, smooth surface of the crystal model, her heart deeply touched. He not only saved her, but also paid meticulous attention to her life and aspirations. Amidst her joy, a tinge of anxiety crept into her heart. She lowered her voice and asked with concern, "Will it be dangerous for you to be here?" If he had known the meaning behind that, a slight tremor of apprehension would have accompanied it. Arthur gazed into her eyes, witnessing her genuine worry, which stirred a warmth and a barely perceptible pity within him. He extended his hand and gently patted her head in a natural and restrained manner, his touch tender, as if soothing a frightened bird, quickly withdrawing afterward. "Do not worry, Ji." His voice was steady and reassuring. "As you mentioned, this is the safest country in the world. Moreover, I have entered legally under the guise of a business inspection for the Wentworth family. Everything is in order." His calm demeanor eased Lin Ji's worries. Indeed, this was Beijing, her home, fortified by the world's most stringent security network. Even Lorenzo's influence could not operate with the same impunity as in Europe. This realization allowed her to relax completely. At that moment, Lin Yizhou, Zhuang Mingshu, and Professor Melvin also glanced over with curiosity. Lin Ji quickly adjusted her expression and smiled as she introduced her family and mentor. "Dad, Mom, Professor, this is my friend Mr. Arthur, whom I met in the UK. He happened to be in Beijing for work and came specifically to congratulate me on my graduation today." She refrained from mentioning Arthur's true family background, nor did she disclose that he was the key figure who helped her escape, merely referring to him as a friend to avoid unnecessary explanations and concerns. Arthur instantly displayed impeccable gentlemanly manners, engaging in polite conversation with Lin Ji's parents and mentor in fluent Chinese, his demeanor poised and his speech elegant, quickly winning the favor of Lin's parents and Professor Melvin. Zhuang Mingshu observed this exceptionally refined and courteous young gentleman, a flicker of admiration and curiosity evident in her eyes. Standing beside Lin Ji, Arthur watched her skillfully introduce him, managing to avoid complications while maintaining politeness, deepening his fondness for her. Her intelligence, resilience, and the thoughtfulness she exhibited at that moment made him feel that rescuing her had been an exceedingly correct decision. Meanwhile, in the study of Hampstead Manor in London, a different scene unfolded. Although it was afternoon in Beijing, it remained morning here. Heavy curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the dawn light. Lorenzo DeSantis sat behind a large desk, multiple electronic screens in front of him displaying financial market data and intelligence summaries from around the globe. However, his gaze failed to focus on any particular piece of information. In his hand was a photo recently obtained through special channels by his subordinates. The image was somewhat blurry, clearly taken from a distance, yet it unmistakably revealed the backdrop of Tsinghua University's grand auditorium, with Lin Ji at the center, holding her certificate, her smile radiant. She appeared so vibrant, free, and brimming with life, a stark contrast to the fear, silence, and tear-streaked visage she bore in his presence. Lorenzo's fingertips unconsciously caressed Lin Ji's face in the photograph, his deep gray eyes swirling with an intricate mix of emotions, relief at seeing her safe, and even more radiant, fury at her escape from his control, and an intense, almost primal possessiveness. She should have been in his manor, blooming solely for him under his watchful gaze. His attention then shifted to the edge of the photo, to the blonde man standing beside Lin Ji, whose demeanor was close and gentle. Though the image was not high in resolution, Lorenzo was almost certain that this man was no ordinary friend. A cold, jealousy-tinged anger began to coalesce in his chest. "Find him," he commanded Marco, his voice low and dangerous, like the growl of a predator poised to pounce. "I want to know who this man is and what his connection is to my missing bird." He set down the photo, leaned back in his chair, and closed his eyes, yet his mind was filled with visions of Lin Ji, the composed figure in the alley, the confident one at the award ceremony, the trembling girl in his embrace, and this woman in the photo, seemingly having forgotten him, smiling radiantly in the sunlight. He would not let go. No matter where she was or what the cost, he would bring her back to his side. This chase was far from over. The man who appeared by her side was undoubtedly an obstacle that needed to be entirely eliminated. The air in the study thickened with his silent vow, heavy with an impending storm. Chapter 22. Undercurrents in the late summer of Beijing. dusk arrived a little later than usual. The afterglow of the setting sun bathed the science building of Tsinghua University in a warm golden hue, the glass facade reflecting a dazzling light. Lin Ji, clad in a simple white lab coat, focused intently on adjusting the precision instruments before her. The data flickering on the screen represented her entire world at that moment. Having returned to the normal rhythm of research for several months, she had devoted nearly all her energy to the laboratory, deliberately sealing away the thrilling past deep within her memory. Outside the laboratory, Arthur Wentworth's understated deep blue Bentley Mulsanne was timely parked in its usual spot. He had been in Beijing for some time, ostensibly under the guise of a family business inspection, but in truth, most of his time revolved around Lin Ji. Almost every weekday evening, he would extend invitations to dine together. Initially, Lin Ji always politely declined, fearing she would burden him and more so that the latent danger might extend to him through their proximity. However, Arthur's persistence exceeded her expectations. Regardless of her refusals, he would patiently wait downstairs. Sometimes, when her experiments did not go well and she was delayed until late, she would find him leaning against the car, holding a thermos filled with her favorite light dishes, perfectly warm. He never rushed her, simply smiling as he offered her the food, saying, "Have a bite first. Don't let yourself get too hungry." This meticulous thoughtfulness flowed like a gentle stream, quietly nourishing Lin Ji's once fractured heart. She could no longer harden her heart to refuse him. The nature of their relationship subtly and naturally evolved through daily dinners, occasional walks, and light-hearted conversations. She began to look forward to seeing that elegant figure at the end of her workday, accustomed to the sense of stability and tranquility he brought. A fondness beyond gratitude quietly blossomed within her heart. That afternoon, Lin Ji had prepared to leave on time after organizing her experimental data. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was an urgent notification from the head of the laboratory. All core researchers were to remain, as an important anonymous donor was set to visit, having contributed a substantial sum to support key project research for the next 3 years, and requested a brief meeting with the team members. Lin Ji paused, a flicker of regret swelling within her. She promptly messaged Arthur to explain the situation. His reply arrived swiftly, imbued with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Understood. Work is important. I will head back first and contact you later." Watching the deep blue Bentley slowly fade from sight, Lin Ji sighed in relief and turned back into the laboratory to await the arrival of the mysterious benefactor. However, within a mere 15 minutes, there was a gentle knock at the laboratory door. The nearest researcher opened it, and everyone was astonished to see Arthur, who had just messaged that he was leaving, return. He was accompanied by 2 well-dressed men, presumably assistants, each carrying a thermos bag brimming with food emblazoned with the logo of a well-known high-end restaurant. "Apologies for the interruption." Arthur stood at the doorway, his smile warm and inviting, his gaze traversing the crowd before settling precisely on the slightly astonished Lin Ji. Considering that everyone might have to work late, he had brought along some dinner, hoping not to disturb their efforts. His unexpected appearance and thoughtful gesture instantly enlivened the previously somber atmosphere of the laboratory. Colleagues gratefully accepted the steaming, evidently well-prepared gourmet meals, showering Arthur with thanks, their eyes gleaming with playful teasing as they glanced at Lin Ji. Arthur personally handed Lin Ji a distinctly smaller and more exquisite food box, softly saying, "I prepared a special portion just for you, featuring your favorite matsutake chicken soup. Enjoy it while it's hot." Observing this interaction, the head of the laboratory felt it unnecessary to keep Arthur waiting outside and politely invited him to sit for a moment in a nearby vacant small conference room. Cradling the hefty food box, Lin Ji felt a surge of warmth within her, and amidst the smiling gazes of her colleagues, she followed Arthur into the small meeting room. The space was modest, furnished with a small round table and several chairs. Outside, the sky had darkened, and the city's lights began to twinkle. Feeling genuinely hungry and enticed by the aroma of the meal, Lin Ji soon found herself engrossed in her food, taking small but swift bites. The warm and flavorful chicken soup instantly soothed her stomach and warmed her heart. Arthur sat across from her, making no move to eat, merely observing her with quiet attention. The soft yellow light illuminated the contours of his gentle profile, while his deep blue eyes brimmed with an almost overflowing tenderness. Noticing a tiny grain of rice stuck at the corner of Lin Ji's mouth due to her hurried eating, he felt a stirring in his heart, a blend of affection and excitement rising within him. Almost instinctively, he reached out, his fingertips trembling slightly as he aimed to brush away the offending grain. Just as his fingers were about to make contact with her skin, Lin Ji seemed to sense it and lifted her gaze, meeting his gentle blue sea of eyes. In that moment, the air thickened, enveloped by an ambiguous yet tense atmosphere. Just as his fingertips were a mere breath away from her lips, a cold, deep voice, imbued with a familiar penetrating force and absolute authority, broke through the tranquility. "Ah, my Ji." That voice caused Lin Ji's blood to run cold. It felt as though it had frozen in an instant. She turned sharply, her pupils constricting in sheer terror. At the door stood Lorenzo DeSantis. Like a dark king in the night, clad in a perfectly tailored black suit, his tie absent, he had casually undone the top buttons of his shirt, revealing his strong collarbone. His towering figure nearly filled the doorway, his deep gray eyes resembling a dormant volcano, first lingering on Lin Ji's suddenly pale face, radiating a fierce scrutiny and icy rage. Then, like the sharpest blade, his gaze slowly shifted toward Arthur Wentworth across the table. An overwhelming aura emanated from him, causing the temperature in the small conference room to plummet, the atmosphere so dense it felt suffocating. A faint yet perilous smirk graced his lips as he articulated, each word echoing in the silence. It seems I've come at an opportune time. Have I interrupted your dinner? Chapter 23. Confrontation. A chill surged through Lin Ji's spine, her blood seemingly frozen. She gazed at the man, who resembled a dark harbinger of doom, her heart pounding violently within her chest, nearly threatening to burst forth. The tranquility she had enjoyed over the past 2 months shattered in an instant, and a tidal wave of fear engulfed her. Instinctively, she took a half-step back, her body trembling uncontrollably. Just as she felt paralyzed by that frigid gaze, a warm yet resolute figure stepped in front of her. Arthur Wentworth advanced a step, subtly shielding Lin Ji behind him as he confronted Lorenzo's intimidating presence. The usual warmth in his smile had vanished, his azure eyes now reflecting calmness and unwavering resolve. Mr. DeSantis, Arthur's voice resonated clearly and steadily within the confined space, carrying a tone of dignified strength, if I am not mistaken. You are the mysterious benefactor that the laboratory has been eagerly anticipating this evening. Welcome to China, to this prestigious institution. He paused briefly, his gaze sweeping over the formidable black-clad men behind Lorenzo before intensifying his tone. This is a rigorous research environment, and Ji is an exceptionally valued and talented scientist. I kindly ask you to be mindful of the occasion and its implications. Ji. Lorenzo repeated the endearing name, his voice low and terrifying, as if it had been squeezed from between clenched teeth. His deep gray eyes fixated on Arthur's face, a storm of black fury brewing within their depths. A fury born from a sense of violated ownership, mixed with a sharp, unforeseen pain that pierced his heart. Lorenzo's gaze shifted past Arthur's shoulder, landing on Lin Ji's pale, frightened face, recognizing her instinctive search for Arthur's protection. It contrasted starkly with the moment of relaxation and even innocence he had witnessed earlier between her and Arthur. A destructive impulse surged within him, nearly overwhelming his reason. He let out a cold laugh devoid of warmth, brimming with icy derision. You dare to call her by name? He refrained from looking at Arthur or Lin Ji again, as if a mere glance could provoke his unraveling. Abruptly, he averted his gaze, his jaw clenched tightly, and strode purposefully toward the visitor room indicated by the laboratory head. His polished shoes echoed heavily against the corridor floor, each step resonating with an oppressive weight, while his silent subordinates followed closely behind, the air around them seeming to freeze with each passing moment. Only when that suffocating presence vanished around the corridor's bend did Lin Ji feel her strength drain away. Her legs buckled, nearly causing her to falter. Instinctively, she clutched Arthur's sleeve tightly, her fingertips icy, her voice trembling uncontrollably. What should we do? He-s here. He-s really here. Arthur, will he do something terrible? Will he hurt us? The overwhelming panic rendered her speechless, and the memories of her captivity flooded back like a nightmare. Arthur sensed her fear and immediately grasped her chilly hand, enveloping it within his warm palm, striving to impart strength and reassurance. He lowered his head, his gaze steady yet gentle, meeting her wide, frightened eyes. Gee, look at me. His voice was steady and powerful, imbued with a peculiar soothing quality. Listen to me. This is China, Beijing, one of the safest places in the world. No matter his capabilities, he must adhere to the law and order here, and he would never dare act with impunity as he might in Europe. Have you forgotten? This is our greatest assurance. He paused, glancing toward Lorenzo's departing figure, a glimmer of sharpness flashing in his blue eyes, yet softening again as he returned his attention to Lin Ji's face. As for me, you need not worry at all. The Wentworth family may not possess the same influence as the DeSantis in certain realms, but we are not powerless. We have a rich history, an unblemished reputation, and extensive connections. If he wishes to harm me, he must carefully consider the consequences. He gently patted the back of her hand, saying, now, all you need to do is act as if nothing has changed and join your colleagues in the reception room to complete this formal meeting. You are an exceptional scientist. This is your domain. Remember, you bear no fault and need not show any weakness before him. I shall be right by your side. Arthur's words served as a soothing balm, gradually dispelling the heavy fear that gripped Lin Ji's heart. She gazed into his steady eyes, feeling the warmth emanating from his palm, and her racing heart began to settle. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her back and nodded. I understand. She adjusted her slightly disheveled lab coat and hair, striving to regain the calm demeanor she usually exhibited in the laboratory. Arthur maintained his position half a step behind her, providing silent support while respecting the necessary distance. His two assistants quietly followed suit, forming a subtle protective presence. The other researchers in the lab gathered as well, their confusion and unease regarding the earlier conflict overshadowed by curiosity towards the imposing benefactor. Observing that Lin Ji and her friend appeared to have composed themselves, they proceeded towards the reception room at the leader's signal. The corridor was silent save for the sound of footsteps. Amidst the crowd, Lin Ji could distinctly hear her heart still racing. Arthur's words instilled courage within her, yet the oppressive gaze of Lorenzo's cold gray eyes lingered like a shadow. She understood that this encounter would not merely be a simple donation ceremony. A storm had descended upon this land she had believed to be entirely safe, heralded by the arrival of that man. Chapter 24. The hidden blade. The reception room of the laboratory was spacious and well lit, with soft lighting casting a warm glow on the polished conference table. Portraits of academic pioneers and charts of significant research achievements adorned the walls, reflecting a rigorous academic atmosphere. However, as Lin Ji entered this space behind her colleagues, it felt as though she had stepped into an invisible pressure chamber, where even breathing became a cautious endeavor. She deliberately chose a seat in the farthest corner from the main position, nearly pressing herself against the wall in an attempt to conceal her presence. Without hesitation, Arthur Wentworth naturally took the vacant seat beside her, his demeanor calm and composed, serving as a gentle yet resolute barrier. His two assistants quietly stood near the entrance of the reception room, contrasting sharply with Lorenzo's menacing subordinates, who loomed like black statues behind the main seat, creating an unspoken standoff. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table, a position respectfully offered by the laboratory's leader. Leaning back against the large leather chair, he appeared relaxed. Yet his deep gray eyes functioned like precise scanners, locking onto the figures in the corner the moment everyone entered. Upon seeing Arthur sit closely beside Lin Ji and noticing her deliberate avoidance, a tumult of anger and sharp jealousy ignited within him. Yet his face remained as frigid as ice, devoid of any expression, though a terrifying undercurrent swirled in the depths of his gaze. The laboratory leader, a professor in his 50s with graying hair, sensed the unusual tension, particularly the chill emanating from the formidable benefactor, which made him feel somewhat uneasy. Clearing his throat, he forced a polite, yet slightly awkward smile to break the silence. Esteemed Mr. DeSantis, first and foremost, please allow me to express our sincerest gratitude on behalf of all our colleagues for your generous donation. Your support is vital to our current research projects and will undoubtedly propel advancements in related fields. Lorenzo nodded slightly in acknowledgement, his gaze not fully shifting to the speaker, instead sweeping over the corner with a barely perceptible intensity. His voice was low and devoid of emotion. Science knows no borders. The research direction of your laboratory is forward-looking, and the results are impressive. What I have done is simply to ensure that excellent scientific endeavors are not hindered by resource limitations, allowing them to benefit humanity more swiftly. This well-articulated statement resonated positively with the researchers present, causing them to nod in agreement, and the tense atmosphere seemed to ease somewhat. However, Lin Ji's heart tightened with increasing anxiety, aware that these were not mere pleasantries. As anticipated, Lorenzo shifted the conversation, his gray eyes finally locking onto the laboratory leader, while his peripheral vision remained fixed on the corner. To foster deeper academic exchanges, I sincerely invite your laboratory to dispatch a core team to my joint research center in Europe for a 3-month in-depth collaboration with leading peers there. All expenses incurred during this period, including international travel, accommodations, and additional research stipends, will be borne by me personally, ensuring that all scientists can work without any concerns. He paused, adding with an undeniable air of authority, the specific personnel list can be jointly determined by both parties. I believe this cross-cultural exchange of ideas will undoubtedly spark brilliant innovations. 3 months in Europe. Lin Ji's mind buzzed with disbelief, her complexion paling further. Indeed, he had not relinquished his intentions. This academic exchange plan was nothing more than a meticulously crafted trap aimed directly at her. He sought to employ this seemingly legitimate method to once again extract her from China, from the environment that was familiar and secure, and re-establish his control over her. Fear coiled around her heart like icy tendrils, rendering her breathless, her hands resting on her knees trembling uncontrollably, fingertips cold. Arthur, who had been keenly observing her, immediately noticed her distress. Without hesitation, he gently placed his warm hand over her cold, trembling one beneath the table, enveloping her delicate fingers in a comforting embrace. Silently conveying his support, he did not look at Lin Ji, his gaze remaining steady on the head of the table, as if it were merely an unconscious gesture. Feeling the steadfast warmth and strength radiating from his touch, Lin Ji's chaotic heart found momentary solace. She turned to Arthur, managing to muster a faint, grateful smile tinged with dependence. However, this brief exchange of glances and their clasped hands beneath the table struck Lorenzo like a blinding flash of light, piercing his eyes with pain. All his calm and facades crumbled in that instant. He clearly perceived Lin Ji's reliance on Arthur, the unspoken understanding that existed between them. A cataclysmic rage, mingled with sharp heartache, surged within him like molten lava, nearly shattering his self-control that he so proudly maintained. The veins on the back of his hand, gripping the armrest, bulged, knuckles turning white from the strain, as the storm brewing in his gray eyes threatened to consume the intimate figures before him. The conference room fell into a peculiar silence, with everyone sensing the increasingly oppressive atmosphere emanating from the benefactor at the head of the table. Akin to the eerie calm before a tempest, the laboratory leader also sensed something amiss, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he opened his mouth, unsure of what words could alleviate the stifling tension. Just as the suffocating silence reached its zenith, Lorenzo abruptly stood up. The towering figure instantaneously brought forth an intensified sense of oppression, as if the very air in the conference room trembled in response. He averted his gaze from everyone, particularly the two individuals nestled in the corner, his voice as cold and unyielding as ice. My assistant will communicate the specific follow-up arrangements with your party in detail. He nearly bit off the words, and without any further niceties, he strode purposefully towards the door. His movements were swift and abrupt, prompting the laboratory director and researchers to rise in a flurry. Lorenzo's steps did not falter. He deliberately chose the most direct path, weaving precisely between Lin Ji and Arthur's seats. As he passed by Lin Ji, his pace momentarily hesitated. Lin Ji distinctly felt the familiar, chilling aura of cedar and danger emanating from him, rendering her body rigid. She could even sense his gaze upon her. A complex mixture of fury that threatened to sear her, an unfathomable and twisted longing, and a ferocity born from a profound sense of betrayal and provocation. His eyes sliced through her like the sharpest blade, laden with infinite warnings and an insatiable possessiveness. A mere glance felt as though it had branded her with an indelible mark. Without lingering, he departed, exuding an almost palpable chill that froze the air around him. The silent, swift footsteps of his black-clad subordinates followed suit, receding like a tide. Only when the heavy footsteps faded entirely into the corridor did Lin Ji feel as if all strength had been siphoned from her, collapsing back into her chair, her back already drenched in cold sweat. She gasped for breath, her heart racing, the last glance from Lorenzo sending chills down her spine. Arthur's hand remained firmly clasped around hers, sensing her lingering shock. He gently patted her hand, his voice low and soothing. "It's over," he asked on. Rising to his feet, he politely nodded to the still-dazed laboratory director and colleagues. "It's late, and you all have worked hard. Ji is tired. I will escort her home to rest." The director promptly expressed understanding. Arthur leaned down, softly addressing Lin Ji, who was still somewhat dazed. "Let us go, Ji. I'll take you home." Lin Ji lifted her gaze, meeting Arthur's warm and steadfast face illuminated by the light, her heart a tumult of emotions. Nodding in agreement, she slowly rose with Arthur's supportive assistance. The two descended the cold steps of the science building side by side, the warm summer evening breeze brushing against their faces, yet failing to dissipate the chill that lingered in Lin Ji's heart. Arthur's firm grip on her hand provided her with the only comfort and warmth she felt at that moment. Chapter 25. Plunder. The night around the science building at Tsinghua University was fragmented into patches of light and shadow by the street lamps. The late summer breeze carried a hint of lingering heat, brushing against Lin Ji's thin garments, yet it could not dispel the coldness and fear that gripped her heart. Relying on Arthur's arm for support, she cautiously descended the steps, her legs still somewhat unsteady. Arthur grasped her hand tightly, attempting to dispel her unease with his warmth, his profile appearing calm and resolute under the street lamp's glow. However, this momentary comfort and support evaporated the instant their eyes fell upon the scene in the open space before the building. Leaning against the door of a black Rolls-Royce, Lorenzo DeSantis was a haunting figure. A slender cigar dangled from his fingers, the crimson ember flickering ominously in the dim light, while the pale blue smoke swirled around his sharply defined features, adding an air of inscrutable depth. He slightly lowered his head, a few strands of hair casting shadows over his eyes, obscuring his emotions, yet the palpable tension radiating from him was akin to a predator poised to strike, rendering the surrounding air stagnant. Several black-clad subordinates stood like statues a few steps behind him, silent yet brimming with menace. Lin Ji's footsteps abruptly froze, her blood seeming to flow backward as a wave of cold surged from her feet to her head. He had not left. What on earth did he intend to do? A profound panic seized her once more, nearly suffocating her. Arthur immediately sensed the looming danger ahead, instinctively tightening his grip on Lin Ji's hand. Drawing her closer to his side, a sharp glimmer of alertness flashing in his blue eyes. Lorenzo seemed to sense their scrutiny. He slowly raised his head, discarding the cigar onto the ground and casually extinguishing it beneath the polished tip of his shoe. As he lifted his gaze, it zeroed in on Arthur supporting Lin Ji, their close proximity igniting the suppressed fury that had barely been contained in the conference room, much like a detonated fuse, instantly igniting chaos. The storm erupted in his deep gray eyes, leaving behind only an overwhelming darkness filled with rage that threatened to annihilate everything. He shot upright, moving with such swiftness that only a fleeting shadow remained in his wake, crossing the short distance between them with the force of a whirlwind. "Let her go?" A low, ferocious roar erupted from Lorenzo's throat. Without a moment's hesitation, one hand gripped Lin Ji's arm with the strength of iron, causing her to cry out in pain, while his other hand mercilessly shoved Arthur aside with astonishing force. Arthur was caught off guard. the overwhelming power propelling him several steps backward before he barely managed to regain his balance, shock and anger replacing the calm demeanor he had previously worn. Almost simultaneously with Lorenzo's assault, his shadowy subordinates sprang into action, efficiently dividing into two groups. One group swiftly moved forward, unceremoniously restraining Arthur and two aides who attempted to assist him, their actions both professional and forceful, rendering them immobile. "Lorenzo, what are you doing? Let her go?" Arthur struggled, fiery anger igniting in his azure eyes as he attempted to break free, but his solitary strength was clearly no match for the multiple professional bodyguards. Lorenzo, however, paid no heed to Arthur's furious cries. His complete focus was fixed on Lin Ji, whom he held firmly in his grasp. With brute force, he wrenched her away from Arthur, pulling her fiercely into his embrace. His arms, as unyielding as steel, tightly encircled her slender waist and struggling limbs, imprisoning her against his solid, heated chest with such intensity that it felt as though he sought to meld her into his very being. Lin Ji was ensnared in his grasp, the familiar scent of cedar and danger enveloping her, inducing a sensation of dizziness and suffocation. She fought desperately, exerting all her strength to pound against his rock-like chest, her feet flailing in a frantic attempt to escape, tears of fear and humiliation welling in her eyes once more. "Let me go? Lorenzo, you madman. Let me go?" Lorenzo lowered his gaze, observing Lin Ji, who struggled fiercely like a frightened fawn, her tear-filled eyes pleading. The more she resisted, the more his fury and a twisted pain within him flared. He raised his cold gray eyes to Arthur, who was being held down by his subordinates, his features contorted with rage, a cruel and contemptuous smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Arthur Wentworth." He enunciated each syllable with icy precision. "It is you who has stolen my treasure from my side, is it not?" He required no answer. His assured tone conveyed everything. The murderous intent in his gray eyes crystallized, fixating on Arthur. "You and your family will pay a grievous price for your audacity." Upon finishing his words, he no longer afforded Arthur any opportunity for retort and disregarded Lin Ji's cries and struggles. He suddenly bent down and lifted Lin Ji, who was kicking and flailing, as if she were a lifeless trophy, and strode purposefully towards the already open door of the Rolls-Royce. "Lorenzo, you scoundrel, let me go? This is China, not your Europe. This is not a place where you can do as you please. I will call the police. I will definitely call the police." Lin Ji was roughly shoved into the back seat of the car, her terrified screams attempting to escape as she tried to crawl toward the other door. Her voice, filled with extreme fear and anger, turned hoarse. Lorenzo followed her in, slamming the door shut with a resounding thud, isolating them from the cacophony of the outside world and Arthur's furious shouts. The luxurious interior of the car instantly morphed into a mobile prison. He did not immediately instruct the driver to depart, but instead turned towards Lin Ji, who was instinctively retreating further away from him. His towering figure loomed over her with an overwhelming sense of pressure, one hand braced against the window beside her head, while the other forcibly grasped her chin, compelling her tear-streaked face to meet his gaze. He leaned closer, his heated breath brushing against her ear and neck, his nose nearly grazing her delicate skin. He inhaled deeply, savoring the familiar and elegant scent of lilies that clung to her hair and body, a fragrance that stirred a maddening longing within him, fueling his rage further. "Call the police," he whispered in her ear, his voice gravelly and perilous, laced with a deadly tenderness. "Ji, if you wish to plunge your friend Arthur Wentworth and the entire Wentworth family into unprecedented trouble, to the point of never recovering, you may proceed." He leaned back slightly, his gray eyes locking onto her suddenly widened, terrified orbs, each word striking her heart like a cold nail. "If I were you, I would refrain from such actions. For I assure you, the consequences would far exceed your imagination." Lin Ji froze completely, as if her blood had turned to ice in that moment. She gazed into his abyssal gray eyes, filled with an unmistakable dominance and cruelty, fully convinced of the veracity of his words. He was capable of it. He undoubtedly had the power to make Arthur and the Wentworth family pay a hefty price. An immense fear, coupled with guilt for potentially implicating others, constricted her throat like two invisible hands, rendering her every instinct to resist or cry for help futile, leaving only silent, desperate tears to cascade down her pale cheeks. Witnessing the despair and capitulation rising in her eyes, a fleeting, complex emotion, almost painful, flashed in the depths of Lorenzo's gaze, but it was swiftly overshadowed by a darker intensity. He released his grip on her chin, yet his fingers lingered, tenderly brushing against the tears that had fallen, before he straightened up and coldly instructed the silent driver waiting ahead to the hotel. The car silently surged forward, gliding smoothly into the traffic of Beijing's night. Outside the window, the cityscape sparkled with serene beauty, while within the confines of the vehicle, despair was forcibly seized, and an inescapable confinement returned. Lin Ji curled up in the corner of the spacious seat, watching the fleeting world of freedom outside, with tears flowing soundlessly. She knew she had once again fallen into the clutches of this man, and this time, he seemed even more determined and ruthless. Chapter 26. A night the Rolls-Royce glided like a ghost through the dark night. silently coming to a halt at the entrance of a top-tier luxury hotel in the heart of Beijing. The doorman, well-trained, approached but exhibited a cautious reverence upon sensing the atmosphere inside the car and Lorenzo's chilling aura. Lorenzo exited first, and without waiting for Lin Ji to react, he bent down and swept her up from the car in a horizontal embrace. His actions were forceful and brooked no refusal, his arms as unyielding as iron bands. Completely disregarding her feeble struggles and the mixed gazes of surprise and curiosity from bystanders. The hotel's opulent lobby, adorned with splendid crystal chandeliers and priceless artworks, transformed into a blurred and suffocating backdrop in Lin Ji's view. She buried her face low, overwhelmed by shame and fear, wishing to disappear